Chapter 270. Within the format pyramid, Baze's projected image seemed to be filled with a layer of clouds and dust, but there was the glimmer of starlight within. Luonan's mind shifted over and saw the starlight flow like a river. It rippled within the format pyramid, and there were layers of dark surging waves that pushed Baze's image up and down. It was an extraordinary scene. However, the current situation could not be supported purely by aesthetics. The uncontrollable growth of soul strength and the capacity of the hollow depository broke through the limit. This caused the interference between the mental and material planes to continue to increase, and the interference to the format pyramid grew stronger and stronger. Luonan was a bit worried. The layout of the format pyramid and the ranks of his believers would undergo a huge change when he woke up. Fortunately, this situation had not occurred yet. His mind swept over Baze's image, triggering a certain key. A long black shadow pierced through the clear waves of starlight. It was the materialization of the order frame, the dark chains. This marvelous chain was like a flood dragon. It bobbed up and down in the endless river of stars, appearing and disappearing from time to time. Right now, it was circling around the periphery of Baze's image. It made a slight sound, and the meaning behind it was probably a guide for Baze's order. That night at Frost River Reality, Anwang had tried to control the demon, but he had not succeeded. The uncontrollable chaos element transmitted through internal channels and corroded life. This was the most important reason why the elites of the order were wiped clean. Baze had been attacked back then. He had nearly exploded and died. In his despair, he had sought out Fairchild, hoping to obtain a dignified death. After Fairchild had restrained Baze, he had asked Luonan to use his order frame to help Baze comb out a new path of life. Luonan had indeed succeeded. Although Baze's life essence had been completely corroded and replaced by the chaos element, Luonan had established a brand new binding order upon this chaos. Baze relied on this to live in this world. But because of this, Baze's life was in Luonan's hands. Of course, Luonan had been asked by Fairchild to save Baze. He did not want to do anything to Baze. Luonan did not think that a strong person like Baze would be able to control him if he were to harden his heart and seek death. After that night, Luonan did not attempt to do anything to Baze. He was admitted to the hospital for treatment, distressed by the increased loss of control over his soul strength. Fairchild was summoned back by the upper echelons of the Order of Justice for questioning and investigation. The two sides did not contact each other. Many times, Luonan simply forgot about this matter. The unforeseen event of the Mystic Arts Research Society made Luonan's train of thought circle around. He was thinking, should I get in touch with this person? Luonan hesitated for a moment, but he didn't make his next move. Aside from the Wraith sign and ink, Luonan had not used this channel to contact or control anyone. It was one thing to treat a Darksider species that lacked intelligence and his own pets. But it was another thing to treat Xie Junping, Cat Eyes, and Baze, a highly intelligent life form. He didn't know what the Order framework could do. Moreover, contacting Baze because of the Mystic Arts Research Society was a little funny. After all, in the eyes of a powerhouse like Baze, the level of a school society was too low. Luonan shook his head and his mind left. As the saying goes, cultivation knows no sun or moon. To a large extent, it referred to the complete loss of one's grasp of time in the outside world when one was in a state of meditation. Luonan felt that he had walked a full circle in the format pyramid interface. In reality, nearly half an hour had already passed. The Phantom flew all the way in autopilot mode and entered the Riverwu district. The car's AI had long since entered Shuelei's reserved address and designed a route. Soon, it brought Luonan to the Bashan building where the Divine Yu Gym was located. This was a large standalone high-rise building. It occupied an area of over 100 acres. Its name was Bashan, and its design was an imitation of the ancient Bashan furnace. It was a very famous landmark building in the Riverwu district. Bashan building was shaped like a mountain, wide at the bottom and sharp at the top. The lower level was a tidy office building, and the upper level was a business district with stacked heavy rocks. Various stores were scattered within, and there was an extremely brilliant green aerobic track that circled around the building and reached the Sky Garden at the very top. This should be one of the highest class business districts in the Riverwu district. Gym Master Shio must be quite wealthy to be able to open a store here and open a gym. Luonan parked the car in the underground parking lot and took the elevator to the high-level business district. He then contacted Shuelei and soon found the location of the Divine Yu Gym under Shuelei's guidance. If the Bashan building was viewed as an artificial mountain, then the Divine Yu Gym should be located in the area halfway up the mountain. It did not take up a large amount of space. It was an open-style building with an ancient courtyard. The building was limited by the topography of the business district. The 3 courtyards were pushed up, occupying a corner of the building facing the sun. It was as if the building was built against the mountain. It was extremely elegant. Though it was located in the bustling business district, the front of the gym was quite simple. A simple signboard with the words, "Divine You," hung on it. It was upright and proper. There was no money left behind and it lacked any distinguishing features. Shuelei rushed out to welcome Luonan at this time. He was wearing the light gray training clothes that Luonan had seen him in for the first time. There was a symbol of a 3-legged cauldron on his chest. His muscles bulged out the training clothes, making him look even more majestic. Luonan's gaze stopped on the 3-legged cauldron symbol for a moment. He suddenly thought of the gym master's name. Of course, it was also the name of this gym. It was very likely that the gym master's name really came from the story of Yu forging the 9 cauldrons. A person was like their name. Looking at the appearance and layout of the gym, Gym Master Xiao Xinyu was indeed an old-school figure. Shuelei didn't know what Luonan was thinking in an instant. He grinned, a bit embarrassed. "Nanster, the gym master is currently teaching a small class. I'm afraid you'll have to wait a bit. Half an hour is fine." Luonan wasn't in a hurry. "It's nothing. All right. Can I listen in for a bit?" Shuelei scratched his head when he heard this. This class won't do. They're all 7 or 8-year-old kids. They're all unstable. Once they fall apart, it'll be hard to gather them again. Let's go to the mind study first and wait a bit." Luonan didn't insist. He followed Shuelei inside. He was just a bit curious. The gym master is personally teaching the children? When Luonan was young, his aunt and uncle had signed up for a few martial arts classes for the sake of training the children's bodies. It wasn't easy to see the owner of the class. Normally the class was taught by a coach. The gym and the training classes were different. There are few people in the gym. It's hard to allocate them. Plus, it's important for the children to build their foundations. So the gym master is personally coming. Shuelei turned his head to look. He lowered his voice and said, "Actually, there are very few children who can persevere. They can't endure the hardships." The gym master also said that there aren't many who truly fit his path. There's no need to forcefully sculpt them, but he can't mislead the students. From a mischievous rock to an unpolished jade, it's enough to shine through. Maybe one day they'll be enlightened, and they'll be able to rely on this path. Luonan laughed as he looked at Shuelei. "So what you're saying is that you fit the gym master's path?" Shuelei wasn't polite at all. "Yeah. The gym master once said that I'm quite similar to him when he was young." Chapter 271. The sky had turned dark long ago. There were not many lit places in the Daoguan. The front courtyard was a bit livelier. There were students and parents shuttling back and forth under the lights. There were very few people when they reached the middle courtyard. The corridor was lit, but it made the courtyard even darker. Shuelei led Luonan up the corridor on the left. They arrived at the back courtyard. It was pitch black here. No one could be seen at all. The lights of the corridor and the haze of the bustling city sprinkled down. Only then would they not be in total darkness. "There aren't usually many people here," Shuelei mentioned. He then pointed at the pitch-black wooden building in front of them. "We're here. That's the mind study." The wooden building looked long and wide under the dusky light. It practically took up most of the back courtyard. This surprised Luonan a bit. He had always thought that the mind study was a study or something like that when he heard Shuelei talk about it. He never expected it to be an extremely large room. It could already be used as a training ground. Luonan was even more certain when he walked into the mind study. This place should have been a training ground in the past. The floor beneath his feet was made of soft wood with excellent elasticity. It was very comfortable to walk on it after taking off his shoes. But it was certainly unused now. Quite a few items were placed inside. The layout was quite casual and it looked a bit messy. There was a short table placed near the door. There were a few cushions and a tea set on top of it. There was a stove next to the short table. It was used to boil water and boil tea. It was clean and tidy. It really did look like someone was here often. Shuelei turned on the lights. The lights only covered the area in front of the door. The layout inside was even more dusky and messy. The shadows were indistinct and it looked a bit terrifying. Shuelei was a bit embarrassed by this situation. The gym master usually lives here. This place is a bedroom, a study, a living room, and even a utility room. It's just that they aren't separated. Luonan was very baffled. Why? The gym master said that he's impatient and full of fire. He needs an open place to channel it. It's easy to get sick if he's stifled. Of course we normal people can't do this. Shuelei took out the tea set, kettle and other things used to entertain guests as he spoke. He turned on the stove to boil water. Who knew that his wristband would vibrate the moment he put the water in? He slapped his forehead after receiving the message. Nanster, sit here for a bit. I still have to go help my senior. Sorry. Go to hell. Of course Luonan didn't mind. The relationship between the two could be said to have been through life and death. There was no need to be so courteous. Shuelei, on the other hand, felt that he couldn't argue with them, so he put his palms together and bowed before hurrying over. It seemed that the dojo was indeed short of manpower. Luonan was a bit surprised. To be able to open a dojo in the Basan building, he should be worth hundreds of millions. Why didn't he hire a few more coaches? Or was it that business was too good for them to handle? Luonan recalled his impression of the Daoguan, but he felt that there weren't too many people in the Daoguan. There weren't many people staying in the back courtyard, and there weren't many people in the middle courtyard. It really wasn't lively. It was a little strange. He didn't think too much about it. Before the water boiled, he stood at the door and watched the wind. This sort of ancient building was rarely seen in the current Xia city. Though it was a bustling business district with an unending stream of people above and below him, the clamor of people was blocked outside the courtyard. It was truly a wonderful place to find peace amidst the hustle and bustle. Outside the mine study, 2 stone figurines lit up. The orange-red glow illuminated the entrance to the mine study, the corridor, and a small area of the courtyard. A gust of wind blew, and leaves rustled as they fluttered down. Only now did Luonan see that there was actually a large tree planted in the back courtyard. It was so thick that it would take 2 people to wrap their arms around it. Luonan was unable to make out its species for a time. He just felt the edge of the light reach out and the shadow of the tree danced. It was quiet and secluded. The rustling sound of the wind cleansed one's heart and mind. It made one's mind clear and one's mind was silently born. Luonan stood under the wooden corridor outside the mine study. He was dazed for a time, and the sound of boiling water behind him woke him up with a start. He walked back through the door and brewed a pot of tea for himself. He was young after all. His thoughts were fickle. His faintly discernible thoughts quickly dissipated, and he sized up the furnishings within the room. This large room possessed many functions and it made him quite curious. He immediately held the teacup, and his gaze swept over the various furnishings behind the dusky light. There were some places where the light couldn't reach and he couldn't see them clearly. He naturally used his mental senses. The range of his clairvoyance was around 10 meters, and it covered the entire area behind the door. His exquisite perception didn't let even the smallest speck of dust escape. Because of this, Luonan discovered that this place was actually quite clean. It couldn't be said to be spotless. However, it was often cleaned and there was a faint sense of order. It seemed that the arrangement of junk naturally separated a relatively independent area. It wasn't as messy and disorderly as Luonan's first impression of it. That's right. Luonan felt relieved. Gym Master Shio was an old-school figure, so there was no need for him to make his own residence this messy. Luonan's interest was piqued after he understood the situation inside. He wanted to figure out how the functional areas represented by the orderly furnishings within the chaos were divided. There are books placed all around. Yes, there are pillows as well. That should be the study. There's a praying mat and it's quite close to the center. Could it be the bedroom? That side is full of furnishings. They look quite old. Is it a collection or is it a storeroom? Luonan pondered over the furnishings one by one, finding them quite delightful. Luonan's gaze roamed all the way, and he made a full circle before he suddenly stopped. There was a large furnishings not too far away from the door. It was an enormous round ball that took an adult to wrap their arms around. It was nearly half the height of a person when placed on the ground. As for the material, it looked like metal. It looked very heavy and there was nothing else in the surroundings. It looked very abrupt. Luonan couldn't think of a use for it, so he simply walked over to take a closer look. Luonan got closer and he felt a slight chill hit him in the face. It was icy cold to the touch. It was definitely made of metal. Was it hollow or solid? If it was the latter, the wooden floorboards might not be able to support it. Luonan looked below the metal ball. It turned out that there was a large bowl-like tray. The metal ball rested in the tray and it looked quite stable. Luonan reached out his hand to push it, but it didn't move. He increased his strength and this time it was too much. The metal ball was greatly dislocated in the tray, and it emitted a grinding sound. The sound was exceptionally clear in the empty and quiet room. Luonan was shocked and he hastily stopped his hand. He didn't know what the structure of the connection was, but he only used a bit of strength, and the metal ball began to roll slightly in the tray. It shook the floor below to the point of trembling. The spinning metal ball rubbed against Luonan's fingertips. Luonan could feel that there were uneven traces on the surface of the ball. It seemed to be broken lines and it was even colored. How could he not see a blurry pattern when the ball spun a bit? And it was luminous. There was something wrong with the style. Luonan was baffled when he suddenly felt that the blurry pattern was lifted up a bit. At first he thought that it was an illusion caused by the spinning, but then the grinding sound that came from the spinning disappeared. The spinning pattern continued to rise until it reached his chest. Chapter 272. Luonan was suddenly enlightened when he saw this. So it was maglev. In today's world, superconducting technology was greatly developed. Similar objects were not rare. The heavy metal ball hung in midair, still spinning. Luonan fiddled with it a bit and its speed increased slightly. The colorful lines on its surface pieced together to form a clearer diagram. Though Luonan was still unable to see what it was rather childlike. This colorful toy was a bit like the floating top Mo Peng had collected when he was young, but it was much larger. Perhaps this was a prop for children to use in class? Luonan fiddled with the metal ball and touched the tray. Judging from the way the two moved when they made contact, they shouldn't be superconducting materials. He couldn't help but be curious as to where the power source for the maglev was. He intentionally increased the precision of his senses. He looked through the metal ball's outer shell and sure enough he discovered a rather odd machine buried in the center of the ball. It didn't look like an electric motor. Just as he was pondering, the sound of footsteps came from outside. Shuelei greeted him. "Nanster, the gym master is here." Luonan rushed to the door and saw Shuelei walk in with a tall and thin man. Luonan didn't get a clear look at the man's face, so he followed his earlier preparations and bowed. "Gym Master Xiao." A loud bang exploded within the empty room. Luonan jumped in fright. He turned around to look and saw that the floating metal ball had already smashed to the ground. It overturned the tray and rumbled as it rolled on the cork floor. Shuelei reacted quickly. He rushed over and caught the rolling metal ball in 2 or 3 steps. Luonan's embarrassment was indescribable. He froze on the spot, not knowing what to do for a time. Shuelei placed the metal ball back on the tray, not forgetting to soothe Luonan's cheeks. "It's nothing. It's nothing. Gym Master Nanster, you guys chat first." Luonan gaped, but the words he had prepared beforehand were useless in this sudden situation. He could only lower his head and bow. "I'm sorry. Sit." Gym Master Xiao, who was standing at the door, walked to the back of the short table and extended his hand to point Luonan to a seat. His voice was dark and hoarse. It was faintly discernible. Were it not for the gesture, Luonan wouldn't have understood what he meant. Only now did Luonan truly see who had come. He was stupefied once more. This Gym Master Xiao was about 40 or 50 years old and was very thin like a bamboo pole. When the night wind blew in, his wide antique robe rustled, as if he could be carried into the sky at any time. The difference in light from inside and outside cast a few shadows on his skinny cheeks. At first glance, he looked like a skeleton whose skin was about to be weathered away. Frankly speaking, this gym master really wasn't good looking. But Luonan was no stranger to this sort of image. His grandfather had been tormented by illness all these years and it was the same. Could it be that this person's health is also not good? Gym Master Xiao was the first to kneel on the ground. Luonan knew that this was an ancient custom, so he learned to sit down. However, Gym Master Xiao only fiddled with the tea set, as if he wanted to brew tea for a guest. Luonan mulled over the wording in his mind, but unfortunately this was far from his forte. He needed time to sort things out again, so he could only maintain his silence. The training ground was silent for a moment. The quieter it was, the more awkward it was. Luonan wanted to speak a few times, but he was unable to find an excuse. He could only find something to do and pay attention to Shuelei through his mental senses. Shuelei placed the metal ball back on the bowl tray and flipped a switch. The outer layer of the ball was disassembled, and a mechanical device was taken out from the central cavity. It was also spherical, with a diameter of 6 or 7 centimeters. It was only the size of a fist, and its outer layer was wrapped in a fine metal mesh. Its inner layer was a device similar to a gyroscope. He fiddled with it a few times, then scratched his head. Clearly this toy was broken. Luonan dispelled his last bit of wishful thinking. This gave him the opportunity to speak. He lowered his head and apologized. I'm sorry, Gym Master Xiao. I put that. He was halfway through his sentence, but he was unable to think of how to describe the metal ball. He was stuck and sweat appeared on his forehead. Gym Master Xiao was pouring water into a cup. He raised his head to glance at Luo Nan. The Tai Chi ball. Yes, the Tai Chi ball. That Tai Chi ball, I will definitely fix it. Cough. It seemed that Luo Nan was fated to not be able to speak a complete sentence today. The itch in his throat flared up and he was unable to block it. He could only turn his head and cough twice. Gym Master Xiao didn't really care. It was broken to begin with. It's already strange that it was able to last this long. He pushed a cup of tea in front of Luo Nan as he spoke. The itch in Luo Nan's throat had yet to subside. He took the cup but he didn't dare to drink it. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to hold it in and choke it out. This was probably a lack of manners. Luo Nan felt rather helpless. Gym Master Xiao ignored him. He picked up the cup and drank it in one gulp, minding his own business. Then he lowered his head and played with the cup in his hand. Luo Nan had just spoken a few words, and now he had to enter a state of silence again. Luo Nan really didn't know what to do for a time. Shuelei saw that the situation was bad, so he didn't care about the Tai Chi ball anymore. He hurriedly put the mechanical device back into the cavity, walked over with hurried steps and knelt to the side. He poured tea for the two of them and he secretly winked at Luo Nan. He deliberately spoke in a loud voice. Nanster, you don't need to be restrained here. The gym master doesn't care about common courtesy. Luo Nan looked at his kneeling posture, then at the teacup in his hand. He was speechless for a time. Luckily, Shuelei's interruption caused Gym Master Xiao to emerge from his state of silence. He continued to play with the cup with his head lowered, but he finally spoke. I heard a few things about you from Shuelei. He recommended that you learn breathing techniques to treat coughs. However, I'm not a doctor. Breathing techniques aren't that miraculous. Luo Nan listened carefully, afraid that he would mishear. But when he heard the second half of the sentence, his heart skipped a beat. He glanced at Shuelei and Shuelei stealthily gestured for him to calm down. Shuelei. Gym Master Xiao suddenly called his name. Shuelei jumped in fright. He hurriedly straightened his body and sat upright. Gym Master. What did you say that day? Shuelei opened his mouth and coughed a few times. Only then did he organize his thoughts. He carefully said, I was talking about the things you said before, Gym Master. You can inspect the internal organs, move the 100 meridians and take in the soul through breathing. Shuelei didn't mention the more mysterious things like, observe the heaven and earth, know yin and yang and know the secrets of the gods, but the meaning was certainly conveyed. Gym Master Xiao didn't say a word for another 5 or 6 seconds. He just let the cup rotate between his withered and bony fingers. Just when Luo Nan thought that Gym Master Xiao was angry, Gym Master Xiao slowly raised his head. His sunken eyes faced Luo Nan. I will speak empty words when I teach. I will give the youngsters a deep impression. I will let them remember a few words. I will also avoid teaching inflexibly and rigidly. Gym Master Xiao's gaze made Luo Nan's hair stand on end, but he still responded, yes. Luo Nan had to admit that even though Shuelei was a living example placed before his eyes, Luo Nan wouldn't believe most of Shuelei's mysterious description. He really didn't expect that he would be able to cure a serious illness by learning breathing techniques. He mainly wanted to avoid offending Shuelei. He also wanted to make his life more convenient in the future. Gym Master Xiao's words were more realistic. Luo Nan could naturally accept it. A few seconds of silence passed before Gym Master Xiao spoke once more. No matter what kind of technique it is, you must start from the real thing. Time and volume are the correct path. Your body isn't suited for volume. Then what about time? Luo Nan didn't understand for a time. Chapter 273. Luo Nan understood what he meant, but his train of thought was unable to turn back. He hesitated and did not answer. Gym Master Xiao gave clearer guidance. You are a student, and you have other matters to attend to. I can teach you, but do you have enough time to absorb and digest it? Luo Nan was speechless. He discovered that this was a very practical problem. His daily classes, the Society's general knowledge training, the daily consumption of Frost River reality, and his own research on formatting theory. Every single one of them took up a lot of time. Of course, he did not need to concoct drugs every day. His schedule was much more relaxed. It was not impossible to squeeze in a bit more time, but it was bound to be scattered and unbearable. How could he guarantee his learning results in this way? Luo Nan looked at Shuelei. Shuelei was stunned. Clearly he had not considered these things. In the end, Gym Master Shio proposed a more practical method. Make a schedule. Make a schedule for the entire day and show it to me. Okay. Luo Nan had a ready-made schedule. It was the general knowledge training plan He Yuan had drawn up for him last time. He just needed to delete the specific course names and take it out for use. Luo Nan wanted to transfer it to Gym Master Shio, but he suddenly discovered that Gym Master Shio did not have his wristband on. Shui Lei said hurriedly, "Just give it to me. The Gym Master isn't used to electronic products." Okay. Shui Lei took the information and connected it to the printer in the corner of the training field. He operated it. Luo Nan was a bit surprised. The wristband was not just a communication tool for modern citizens. It was an integrated pass that contained proof of identity, social privileges, assets, credit, and other contents. Luo Nan did not feel this when he wore the wristband, but once he lost it, he would immediately experience the feeling of being unable to move an inch. His uncle worked at the SCA. He had taught the children of his family a special social experience class. It left a deep impression on Luo Nan. Amidst the hum of paper being passed, Luo Nan was finally able to match Gym Master Shio with the image of an old-school character he had preset. It seemed to make sense to use this as an explanation. Shui Lei handed over the printed form. Gym Master Shio swept his gaze over it and said calmly, "Who made this?" Luo Nan was startled. Shui Lei laughed before he could respond. "Could it be Secretary He?" "Oh, it's Sister He." Gym Master Shio lightly shook the paper, causing it to shatter. Then, he placed the paper on the short table and placed the cup he had been playing with on top of it. "Not bad, I finally have time to sleep. If you want to learn the breathing technique, you must ensure that you sleep no less than 6 hours every night. Learning to breathe begins with sleeping." Luo Nan was stunned. He instinctively looked at Shui Lei. The latter winked at him fiercely, signaling him to agree. Gym Master Shio didn't wait for Luo Nan to speak before saying, "There's no need to rush to answer. Go back and think about whether or not you can guarantee a stable routine. Then you can make a decision." With that, Gym Master Shio raised his hand, indicating that he could leave. "That's it? Is this dojo master easy to talk to or not easy to talk to?" Luo Nan felt a bit uncomfortable. His brain was a bit numb, so he let Shui Lei lead him to salute Gym Master Shio, bid him farewell and leave. The two continued to follow the walkway back. On the way, Luo Nan was still pondering, learning to sleep? You learn to breathe in your sleep. Shui Lei corrected his misconception. The sleeping immortal technique, the nose-locking technique, and the sleeping dragon hibernating technique have existed since ancient times. Gym Master Shio chose this point to cut in. He must have taught you in accordance with your current situation. Luo Nan grunted. He wasn't doubting Shui Lei. The world was vast. There were all sorts of strange things, especially within the scope of supernatural powers. Just from what Luo Nan knew, Mr. Bai's dream technique was closely related to sleep. There was also Ruiwen. She had already slept for over half a month. Luo Nan was certain that she used sleep to adjust her state. Gym Master Shio had said something extremely well. No matter what kind of technique it was, one must start from the real thing. Only when one truly learned it would one know if it was useful or not, and how effective it would be. Shui Lei still possessed this level of patience. Luo Nan's brain finally sprang to life, but he remembered something else. Oh right, the Tai Chi ball. Luo Nan still didn't know what a Tai Chi ball was, but he had broken someone else's equipment. It was clear as day. He needed to give Shui Lei an explanation. Shui Lei couldn't help but scratch his head when he heard the words Tai Chi ball. That thing really is broken. Forget it. Don't worry about it. Concentrate on organizing your routine. Work hard when you get back. I'll think of a way to fix that thing. Luo Nan really wasn't familiar with the situation. He could only say, "I'll pay for the repair fees. We'll talk about it later." Shui Lei chuckled and led Luo Nan outside. The two passed through the atrium and the front courtyard. There was practically no one in the Daoguan right now. Shui Lei explained to the deserted situation. "We haven't been recruiting new classes lately because we're about to move." Luo Nan had been in the back courtyard for over half an hour. He had a deep impression of the quiet and secluded feeling of the Daoguan. Why would they move such a good place? Shui Lei sighed. Gym Master won this place in a bet with someone in order to settle down in Xia City back then. The property itself belongs to Boshan Industries. The person who made the bet only paid 10 years of rent. Now that the lease is up, the rent for renewing the lease is astronomical. We don't have the savings. Gym Master isn't good at business. His days are quite bitter. The two had already walked to the entrance. Luo Nan turned his head. It was hard to imagine what it was like to be unable to earn money in such a bustling area. But when he saw the simple words "God Yu" on the Daoguan signboard and thought about Gym Master Xiu's temperament, Luo Nan felt that Shui Lei's words weren't strange. Back then Xiaolin said that if the gym master sublet the Daoguan and switched to a smaller place, he would have been rich just from the rent alone. He wouldn't have ended up like this. Shui Lei was a bit unnatural when he mentioned his ex-girlfriend. Luo Nan laughed awkwardly. Frankly speaking, he never thought of subletting. Judging from Shui Lei's tone, it seemed the same. Everyone here didn't have any brains for economics. Luo Nan bid farewell to Shui Lei and didn't delay any longer. He rode the phantom flying car straight to Renai Hospital. Since he had to go to the Daoguan, his treatment and study time were pushed back to the evening. Time was tight, and he needed to discuss matters concerning his schedule with He Yuan. However, when Luo Nan arrived at the hospital and saw Bai Xinyan, He Yuan was nowhere to be seen. If you want private tutoring today, you'll certainly be disappointed. The accident investigation team from the society's headquarters just arrived in Xia City half an hour ago. Bai Xinyan gestured for Luo Nan to take off his clothes and put on his equipment. She raised her eyebrows when she saw Luo Nan staring blankly in place without moving. Student Luo Nan, please don't make your disappointment so obvious, okay? Ever since He Yuan had revealed Bai Xinyan's intentions, Luo Nan's resistance to her teasing had increased greatly. In a certain sense, this could be considered a kind of confrontation. He thought for a moment and asked, "Investigation team. What does she mean by adding the accident?" Bai Xinyan placed a hand on his shoulder. "Gym Master Xiu, what did he say to you?" Chapter 274. When a man and a woman maintained gazing at each other for a long time without any physical desires or emotional connection, they could only be understood as the manifestation and transmission of dominance. Luo Nan certainly did not think that much, but Bai Xinyan was able to grasp the subtle meaning within. From her point of view, Luo Nan was far from being able to dominate others with his current capital. He also hadn't truly felt the domination of others towards him. Then the answer was very obvious. This was merely a display of his emotions, nothing more. In other words, childish. There was really no meaning in maintaining the same channel as a childish boy. Bai Xinyan did not want to force herself. She simply reached out and pressed down on Luo Nan's eyes. "The color of your pupils is really ugly." She let go of Luo Nan's hand before he could struggle. She circled to the other side, completely ignoring Luo Nan's expression. She was pondering something in her mind. This kid's hostility has been growing more and more intense since Frost River reality. It's completely unreasonable. Luo Nan pressed down on his ears while she was pondering. He subconsciously took 2 steps away. He must have received a message from the psychic wave network. The person contacting him at this time was most likely He Yuan. 2 seconds later, he received a communication request from Bai Xinyan. It was He Yuan on the other end. This was a 3-way communication initiated by He Yuan. Bai Xinyan was not a member of the society, but for the sake of convenience, she applied for temporary permission to use the Hexa-year. Ouyang Chen was always very generous when it came to promoting the results of his own research. He handled it very easily. As a result, Bai Xinyan could observe the daily ecology of the Xia City branch from a close distance. She could gather the relevant information in a relaxed and happy manner. With such a big-hearted direct superior and many colleagues below her, the nun's heart would not be at peace after her retirement. Bai Xinyan smiled and greeted her with a bit of pity. "Hello, Sister Nun. Are those imperial envoys finished serving you?" He Yuan ignored Bai Xinyan's teasing. Perhaps she did not want to mention those people at all. She cut straight to the point. "I hope to hear your opinion on Mr. Luo's study arrangements at the Daoguan." "I have no opinion. It's because your boss didn't mention this matter to me at all. I wonder if he has an opinion of Gym Master Xiu? Or does he have an opinion of me?" Luo Nan was speechless at such an open and above-board complaint. However, it was impossible for him to continue stubbornly at a time like this. He could only comfort himself by saying that he had learned a thing or two. Following that, he explained the main points of his trip to the dojo in a few words. In truth, there was nothing much to say. Gym Master Xiu's meaning was very clear. He could teach them, but he had to arrange the time well. At most, the time period required was somewhat against the norm. That was all. He Yuan pondered for a moment, then asked Bai Xinyan, "Will it affect your treatment?" "Not at the moment. Of course, if you guys don't mind, I can add a research project." I want to see whether or not student Luo Nan's absorption and transformation efficiency has improved under the guidance of Gym Master Xiao. Alright. What do you think of Gym Master Xiao? Serious? Cordial? Smooth? Solitary? Aren't you going to explain to Secretary He? Bai Xinyan's ability to make use of every opportunity was unparalleled. Luo Nan rolled his eyes. He didn't want to answer. Fortunately, at this time He Yuan forcefully returned to the main topic. It's fine as long as it doesn't affect the treatment. For the other projects, there was still room for adjustment of the timetable. Some pure knowledge projects for general knowledge learning can be taught through the psychic wave network. It would be even more ideal if they could be combined with the health pod treatment. The training time at Frost River Reality isn't much. The plan is feasible. However, let's postpone the particularly brain-burning classes for now. Excessive mental tension will certainly affect the effects of treatment. Most of them are general knowledge memories. The intensity isn't great. I will remind the others about the specifics. The two ladies took on the responsibility of drawing up the schedule, and it became the main axis of discussion. They only consulted Luo Nan, the person involved, on a few details. After taking a rough shape, He Yuan contacted the society members involved in the schedule one by one. Soon, a brand new schedule was completed. Luo Nan had a subtle feeling when he saw the brand new schedule appear before his eyes. It was as if he was an outsider. He was on a completely different rhythm from the two ladies. Luo Nan quickly suppressed this peculiar feeling. He asked, "Should I take this form tomorrow and contact Gym Master Xiao?" He Yuan grunted. She seemed to want to say something, but in the end she simply said, "Show it to him. If there are any problems, you need to actually do it before you can make adjustments. Today we'll first do an experiment. We'll see the effects of networked learning in the treatment pod." Bai Xinyan pressed down on Luo Nan's shoulder. "Hey, did you hear that? I told you to take off your clothes." Luo Nan gritted his teeth as he took off his clothes and entered the pod. Bai Xinyan was quite considerate in delaying the Frost River Reality treatment. She gave the next hour to He Yuan. Today's general knowledge course was still the world order in and out of the psychic wave network. Luo Nan put on the immersive helmet early on, but he did not activate it for the time being. He connected to the psychic wave network through the hexaear and entered learning guidance mode according to He Yuan's instructions. The first thing Luo Nan saw was the home page of the society. It was also the main interface of the game, 10 Days in the Wilderness. The scenery of the wilderness, which he had only seen with his own eyes in a few social practice classes, appeared before his eyes. The rust-colored soil was like waves of solidified ocean waves. It extended into the distance, seemingly without end. The bulletin board, which had the style of a Western cowboy, seemed to be within reach. Looking at this scene, it seemed that he would be able to enter the wilderness with just one more step. "Why don't you give it a try?" A clear and distinct voice rang in his ear. This feeling was far too real, so much so that Luo Nan instinctively turned his head. Then he saw He Yuan. Right now, He Yuan was still wearing a well-tailored professional suit. The material was navy blue, and the inside was a white shirt that would never go wrong. Then there were long pants that accentuated the slender shape of her legs. She appeared confident, clean, and lively. This was her usual style of dressing. She would not dress up in the slightest bit of use. She would not have any other adornments. Luo Nan often saw this sort of image, but today was a bit different. This was because He Yuan's body was clearly draped in a layer of dreamy light. The original meaning of this light was to remind him that what he saw was not a true form. But the light contrasted with He Yuan's jade-like porcelain body. That sort of inhuman texture had a powerful impact that made Luo Nan lose his voice for a time. Chapter 275. Luo Nan was more or less in a daze when faced with He Yuan's new image. He only woke up from his dream when He Yuan's gaze, which seemed to have substance, shot over. "Can I?" The hexaear invented by President Ouyang Chen was the terminal device of the psychic wave network. There were 6 communication levels in total. Most awakened were able to realize extremely convenient network functions through the first 3 levels. It was enough for daily use. The simulator belonged to the 4th communication level. Luo Nan had heard Mr. Bai talk about it before. This function was similar to the out-of-body state. One could realize the materialization of one's own logic on the psychic wave network. It was similar to the experience of virtual reality. This was already a relatively high level. Many people in the society couldn't handle it. Luo Nan was a mentally enhanced individual. He possessed the ability to send his soul in the out-of-body state early on. He had an advantage in this aspect compared to the majority of people. Mr. Bai had long determined that Luo Nan should be able to enter this level. But Mr. Bai also said that Luo Nan absolutely couldn't use the simulator function before the problem of the imbalance between body and soul was resolved. Otherwise, it was very likely that his soul strength would continue to grow, bringing even greater pressure to his body. He Yuan responded to this question. Because of the results of President Ouyang's logic world, the simulator function has undergone a large change. It is currently in a debugging state. After entering this level, the consumption of soul strength will increase exponentially. So as long as we control it properly, we can escape before the positive gain appears. Time is precious. We can begin. Okay. Luo Nan responded simply. He Yuan didn't directly engage in practical training. Instead, she reviewed the old and learned the new. Last time I told you about the concrete form of supernatural powers on the psychic wave network? Yes. Regarding supernatural powers, the East traditionally calls it qi. Some people in the West call it mana. Burners call it internal energy. The society's official name is telekinesis. No matter what it's called, it's fundamentally an energy information bestowed with order by the ability user. Luo Nan really liked the term bestowed order. This was in line with the comprehension he had gained from cultivating to this day. This made him talk without end. Therefore, the hexaear invented by President Ouyang is called a telekinesis according to the society's definition. Its built-in electronic components are not sophisticated, but it can guide psychic power to form a special terminal structure to achieve the analysis and control of energy information. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. From Luo Nan's perspective, the terminal structure of the hexaear was just a simple configuration. In terms of precision, there was still a large disparity between it and the external neuron and the deep-sea Type 4 dynamo core. It was even a bit inferior to the imitation chipset he had seen at Frost River Reality. But the most amazing thing about this invention was that it made full use of the ability user as a carrier. Through guidance, a relatively simple structure could be used to great effect. If a description had to be made, then the dynamo core and the imitation chipset were roughly equivalent to fully automatic weapons. As long as one knew how to operate them, they would be able to display astonishing effects in the corresponding field very quickly. As for the Luer, it was like a famous sword in ancient times. In the hands of a child, it might not even be able to kill a chicken. But in the hands of a peerless swordsman, it could defeat 1,000 troops and be invincible. Of course, this description might not be appropriate. Luo Nan had yet to truly explore the dynamo core's inner workings. He did not have an accurate understanding of the upper limits of the hexaear. But this did not hinder his feelings of admiration towards President Ouyang Chen. This kind of simplification and precise and appropriate structure made him, a beginner who had been painstakingly studying soul configuration, to improve efficiency, only sigh in amazement. If his soul configuration had been purified to this degree, the external neuron would not have been stuffed to the point of bursting from the rapid growth of soul strength. Luo Nan thought about his current situation of being helpless when facing the enormous barrier lake. He had the impulse to run over and take Ouyang Chen as his master. He Yuan was not surprised by Luo Nan's deep understanding of the hexaear and the psychic wave network. She had experienced Luo Nan's outstanding ability to understand this course during her last lecture. This was under the premise that the political form and content were not involved. She just added a bit. In the first 3 levels of communication, the hexaear only needs to transmit and interpret the information flow. But when it comes to the simulator level, it involves the sharing of energy. In other words, the telekinesis of tens of thousands of people is used to support an enormous virtual world. In this world, the transmission of energy and information is extremely efficient. Just like last time when we faced, that fellow who controlled the human-faced arachnid? Luo Nan nearly blurted out Mo Luan's name. During the operation against Jack back then, Elder Mo Luan of the Blood Flame Order had brought the human-faced arachnid to hunt for food. It had brought He Yuan and the others a great deal of trouble. In the end, He Yuan had borrowed Ouyang Chen's power through the psychic wave network to repel the arachnid. That scene was still fresh in Luo Nan's memory. He could not help but ask, can it be done as long as one enters the simulator level? In theory it's possible. But the burden is very heavy and the authority required is very high. Perhaps there will be improvements in the future. The psychic wave network has undergone a fundamental change due to the integration of the logic world. What we need to do next is to understand it as comprehensively as possible before most people arrive. He Yuan's reminder made Luo Nan suddenly realize that he was clearly standing at the entrance to the wilderness, but he did not see the silhouette of a single person. How many people usually come here? The average number of people online is around 800. That's a lot. How many awakened are there in the entire Xia city? I'm talking about the entire world. He Yuan supplemented with an explanation. Aside from mentally enhanced people who can send their souls and leave their bodies, the vast majority of people have to become architects before they can come into contact with this level. And sending their souls and leaving their bodies are extremely rare among ordinary awakened. So under normal circumstances, every person you come into contact with here is a veteran. Luo Nan was a bit stunned. Then isn't it a bit early for me to come here? He Yuan did not respond to this question. She walked slowly, stepping into the wilderness with a single step. The radiance of her translucent figure caused the dark red background color to brighten up. Then she turned to look at Luo Nan. The name of the society is the Wilderness Explorers Society. The main direction is the wilderness. Of course, this also includes the even more dangerous oceans. President Ouyang chose the 10 days in the wilderness game as the main interface. This wasn't a random choice. This was a very good place to learn basic tactics. We'll focus on adapting today. If there aren't any abnormal reactions, then Crag Burst will lead you here to learn tactical commands for the next few days. He is also the only one among your instructors who can enter the 4th level. The other classes will be interspersed. Luo Nan knew that the time for idle chatter was over. He nodded in agreement. There's one more thing. Yuan suddenly smiled. This smile came without any warning. It was resplendent and dazzling under the reflection of the illusory radiance. It was dazzling. Then she waved her arm through the air. A second later, a mirror appeared at the border of the wilderness. The mirror reflected a ball of fuzzy light. It was like a drifting mist. In the center of it, one could faintly make out the shape of a tetrahedron. This was... Luo Nan suddenly realized something when he saw the angle of the mirror. Chapter 276. This was the first time Luo Nan entered the simulator level of the psychic wave network. Since the feeling was similar to that of an immersive device, it lacked a bit of novelty. He just treated this as a virtual reality experience unique to ability users. He never expected that his appearance in this world would actually be like this. Luo Nan thought about how he had used this appearance to communicate with He Yuan. It was hard for him to avoid embarrassment. No wonder she wanted to laugh. A rare smile appeared on He Yuan's face, but it was extinguished in an instant like a firework. Then she returned to her usual calm. You're still lacking in self-reflection. If you want to move normally here, you must first establish your own image. So I have to mold a mold like in some games? It's self-awareness. Self-portrait? The two instantly communicated a few concepts. He Yuan originally wanted to give a more detailed explanation, but she stopped when the words reached her mouth. She only kept the mirror. How you want to establish your image is up to you. Luo Nan stared blankly in front of the virtual mirror for a while. He saw how serious He Yuan was. It was hard not to overthink things. But he couldn't think of any other ideas no matter how much he pondered. His thoughts stirred at once, and the mirror's reflection formed a rough outline. The general process was no different from his daily sketches. Luo Nan had once mentioned to Xie Junping that he wasn't too good at self-portraits. This was not an excuse. He had never been able to grasp his own characteristics, so he could only draw a likeness. But compared to the vast majority of people in this world, his ability to mold himself was quite reliable. Soon, the fuzzy glowing body in the mirror transformed into a simple human figure. It slowly enriched and fine-tuned. When it took form half a minute later, it was already 70 to 80% similar to Luo Nan himself. If he was a bit more detailed, he would certainly be able to do it even better. Is this okay? Luo Nan raised his hand. He felt that it was more or less the same as a solid state, so he turned his head and asked. He Yuan looked at him for a long time and shook her head slightly. Luo Nan asked curiously, "What's wrong?" "This is a trick." He Yuan walked back to Luo Nan's side. On the simulator level, our image should reflect the characteristics of our individual energy and information operation structure. According to President Ouyang's explanation, it can be considered a self-logical inspection. For example, me. As she spoke, He Yuan raised her hand. Her long and slender fingers slightly spread open, indicating for Luo Nan to look over. My current image isn't what I want it to be. However, a burner's inner energy, The circulation of energy and information was based on the form of light and heat. That was why my image was unavoidably glowing. Others can tell at a glance that I'm a burner. Luo Nan stared blankly at He Yuan's jade tube-like fingers for a while. He finally understood. In other words, the image on the simulator level is also some sort of objective reality. At the very least, it's a kind of projection. It's not something that can be made out of whatever you want. He had indeed thought it through. However, when he looked at his reflection in the mirror, he could not help but scratch his head. But I am still not an awakened. I haven't figured out my own logic yet. Luo Nan found a good reason, so much so that He Yuan was stunned for a moment. Then she nodded. Indeed. This point must be taken into consideration. Let's move on to the next stage and see how it goes. She indicated for Luo Nan to follow her as she spoke, stepping into the boundary of the wilderness with a single step. Luo Nan carried a strong sense of curiosity as he followed behind. He even reached out his hand to touch the notice board within the sandstorm. The roughness of the touch immediately returned to him. It's made of wood. The boundary between reality and illusion instantly blurred. Luo Nan turned his head, but the so-called entrance had long since disappeared. All he saw was the boundless, rusty red earth. Instead, the outline of a building appeared in front of the notice board. Right now, he could be considered to have truly entered the simulator level. Luo Nan did not have the energy to sigh with emotion. He Yuan's practical lesson was absolutely not to bring him to see the scenery. He Yuan took him to familiarize himself with the environment for the next 20 minutes. The main location of the activity was a small town that was completely the same as the setting of the 10 days in the wilderness. It was called Blood Rock. In the game, this was the supply point for players and the place where missions were issued. But on the Psychic Wave network, this place was more like a large salon. People who are online will carry out exchanges and discussions here. Discussions about what? Luo Nan had originally thought of using the idea of porting the game, but he suddenly discovered that his thoughts were childish when he heard He Yuan's introduction. Each and every one of these veterans were outstanding and famous characters of the inner world. They all had their own abilities and their own pursuits. How could they have the leisure to run here and play games? I've only come here once after joining the society. I didn't participate in the specifics. But I heard President Ouyang say that the topics they discuss are mostly related to self-logic, energy structure, mental and material interference, and other domains. Luo Nan blinked. We can talk about it offline. But it's not as convenient as here. The Psychic Wave network is built by tens of millions of ability users. It's like a supercomputer. President Ouyang and the others can utilize the resources here to establish models that are hard to realize in reality. Alright, the style was quite appropriate. The problem was that Luo Nan had never seen such a dilapidated salon before. He Yuan led Luo Nan to walk on the central street of the small town. There was not a single soul in sight. The entire small town looked as if it had just been ransacked by a tornado. The vast majority of the houses had collapsed into ruins. Only a few buildings remained in their original state. Practically every building is an independent section. A portion of them are portals for the game. They provide entertainment for people, but most of them are experimental models. They are the crystallization of the wisdom of many people. What's going on right now? The influence brought about by the logic world. He Yuan spoke softly. Since President Ouyang added the results of the logic world into the mix, the simulator's structural laws have undergone great changes. The vast majority of experimental models are unable to adapt to the changes in the environment. They have all been destroyed. The logic world? Luo Nan had a general understanding of the principles of the construction of the logic world. The structure of deep interference between the mental and the material was indeed very unfriendly. But the method of recreating the world through spatial faults was truly a mountain to behold. Sister He, are you saying that this place is equivalent to another logic world? He Yuan shook her head. This isn't my field of expertise. Luo Nan couldn't get an answer. He turned his head to look all around, but he couldn't see things clearly. He thought for a bit and walked to the edge of a ruin. He lowered his head to size up the rubble and rubble. The shape of a snowflake. How orderly. These ruins looked messy and disorderly from afar. But upon closer inspection, Luo Nan realized that each piece of debris displayed a certain structural pattern. He could find some sort of rule in each piece. It was nearly impossible to accomplish this in the real world. The difference between natural and artificial. Luo Nan extended his hand and picked up a piece of rubble. He wanted to seriously study it, but his fingertips lightened just as he lifted it halfway. The rubble fell to the ground. Luonan was a bit stunned. Chapter 277. Luonan instinctively reached out his hand to grab the crushed rock. The feeling of touch, weight and so on still existed. He really did grab the crushed rock. Right now he was squatting on the ground with his back to He Yuan. His picking and tossing actions were very normal. He Yuan's attention wasn't on this. She took advantage of this time to continue introducing the simulator. The psychic wave network was established by President Ouyang. The virtual world is also endowed with basic order by him. However, President Ouyang didn't completely control it. Instead, he gathered the collective wisdom of researchers and endlessly adjusted it, turning individual order into public order. Bloodrock Town is one of the important pivots in establishing order. Luonan's attention was diverted a bit by He Yuan. He withdrew his gaze from the crushed rock and turned his head to ask, "Isn't this very troublesome?" Actually, what Luonan wanted to say was, why did he have to strip away his exclusive authority without rhyme or reason? This would certainly impede him, right? He Yuan was just about to respond when her gaze shifted to the side. Luonan looked over as well and saw the largest public exchange area in the town. It was similar to a tavern. The wooden swinging door swayed with a banging sound and a figure walked out. There were other people in the town? The other party clearly heard the conversation between Luonan and He Yuan. He directly opened his mouth and said, "How can a single person control the complete structure of a virtual world? Even if they do, who would come here under the conservative and closed rules and order?" This was a man around 40 years old. He could be said to be in the prime of his life at this age. The newcomer's appearance was indeed decent. He had a tall stature and wore a fitted suit. His accessories were extremely exquisite, but they didn't match the environment of the town. Actually, He Yuan was also like this. The two of them were dressed like white-collar workers and gold-collar workers in large corporations. They weren't explorers wandering the wilderness. Plus, they clearly knew each other. After interrupting, the person greeted, "I heard that the simulator has been modified. I specifically asked President Ouyang for temporary privileges to come and take a look. I'm not bothering you guys, right?" He Yuan responded with a faint "Mr. Yuan," and didn't say anything else. Mr. Yuan revealed a faint smile as he walked over from the main street. However, he didn't go to He Yuan's position. Instead, he walked to Luonan's side. His tall figure formed a striking height difference with Luonan, who was crouching on the ground. Luonan wanted to get up, but Mr. Yuan spoke a step ahead of him. "In this day and age, no one can eat alone. Everyone can abandon anyone who wants to form a monopoly. Just like a listed company, the rules and profits obtained must reflect the interests of every shareholder. So I have to say, President Ouyang has made a very wise choice." "Who is this?" Luonan finally stood up. He really didn't like the attitude of this person. It should be said that he was disgusted by the large capital of Quantum Corporation. He didn't like all such remarks. Moreover, this person's evaluation of Ouyang Chen was rather arrogant. To think that he was still in the psychic wave network. Did he not even understand basic respect? A light flashed in Luonan's mind when he thought of this. He had a general idea of the identity of the person who had come. Sure enough, He Yuan gave Luonan an introduction. "Little Luo, this is Mr. Yuan Fei of the Society's headquarters Incident Investigation Team." "So, Xiao Luo?" Luonan discovered that he had been demoted. In reality, there was no problem with He Yuan addressing him this way. In fact, it was even more appropriate. He also knew that there might be some meaning behind it. But the human heart was subtle and hard to understand. His heart skipped a beat when he heard this form of address. He didn't feel too good. Luonan's performance was wooden in Yuan Fei's eyes. He didn't understand human affairs. Speaking of which, it was quite surprising to see such a fellow at the simulator level. Yuan Fei sized Luonan up with a few glances. Luonan's powerful posture made the young man feel very uncomfortable. He changed his crouching posture and stood up. Yuan Fei's eyes were clear and bright. He was very arrogant at such a young age. But to be able to enter the simulator level, Xia City had unearthed yet another talented person? Clang. An abrupt sound rang out. It was exceptionally clear in the quiet atmosphere. The gazes of the three people shifted to that side for a moment. They saw a piece of rubble tumble down from the rubble. Luonan looked stupidly at his own palm. Did it slip again? No, the feeling this time was much clearer than last time. That piece of rubble had fallen from the palm he had just condensed. It had pierced through his palm and the back of his hand. He subconsciously moved his fingers and examined them over and over again. Finally, he confirmed that his seemingly materialized palms seemed to be condensed from clouds. It was severely lacking in density, lacking in bearing capacity. It could only hold the weight of a piece of rubble for a moment. A slight distraction would cause the palm to dissipate. So it was like this. Yuan Fei shook his head and turned to He Yuan. Miss He, the structure of the logic world has indeed become more and more complex after merging with the psychic wave network. We need to increase the maintenance power of technicians. But there's no need to spoil things through excessive enthusiasm. I think this child is quite good for being able to realize high-level applications of the psychic wave network at such a young age. But there's no meaning in forcefully entering the 4th level. Luonan was very unhappy to hear these words. What did she mean by forcefully entering? How am I forcefully entering? Just as Luonan was about to speak, a full-length mirror materialized out of thin air and stood by his side. It was not He Yuan's handiwork but Yuan Fei's. You're Xiao Luo, right? Keep squeezing. It's going to fall apart. Luonan turned his head to look and was given a fright. It was unknown when, but his face had become swollen and swollen. His facial features were even a bit out of place. He looked ugly and ridiculous. Sunlight sprinkled down as he spoke, and part of the light even penetrated through his body. He did not look like a normal person no matter how one looked at him. The ability to interfere with the material plane is insufficient. It would have been fine if it was the old version, but the new version has greatly increased the effectiveness of interference power. It's like the increased pressure in the depths of water. If the structural strength is insufficient, it will lead to disintegration. Yuan Fei had one hand in his pocket. It was as if he was sizing up a very interesting toy. He even extended his hand and gestured a few times outside of Luonan's body. He turned his head to speak to He Yuan. It looks like the new version has increased the entry threshold. It will be very strenuous for Xia City. Miss He, can you suggest to President Ouyang to let go of technical maintenance and let his colleagues from the other branches share the pressure? He Yuan's brows furrowed slightly. The psychic wave network has been open-sourced for a long time. Technical maintenance is also carried out in Bloodrock Town. I'm talking about the basic structure. Yuan Fei shot a glance at Luonan and smirked. Upgrading just like that. It's not just the children of Xia City that are troubled. Luonan looked at his increasingly inhuman reflection in the mirror. He tried to straighten it out, but the feeling was completely different from before he entered the wilderness. He felt a clear feeling of stagnation. When his telepathic thoughts cut in, it was as if he had bumped into glue. It was extremely strenuous to control. The more he tried to control it, the more serious the situation of his body's structural spillage became. In the end, his body completely collapsed into a mist, returning to its original state. Chapter 278. Naturally, the practical lessons in the simulator could not continue. He Yuan dealt with Yuan Fei in a simple manner before leading Luonan out of the psychic wave network to return to the plane of reality. Luonan opened his eyes, but all he saw was pitch-black darkness. A specially modified sealed helmet was already covering his head. It was just that the immersive guidance had yet to be activated. He just stared at this darkness, his thoughts flowing. Yuan Fei, who came from the incident investigation team of headquarters, had just arrived in Xia City. He didn't understand the situation. He saw that Luonan was young, yet Luonan had entered the 4th level of communication and tried to operate the simulator. He felt that failure was normal and that success was abnormal. He just laughed it off and didn't think about it at all. But Luonan was well aware of the situation of his body and soul being unbalanced. He also had enough of the pain of the uncontrollable growth of his soul strength. Suddenly, the problem of low interference power appeared. Anyone would stare blankly for a period of time when faced with such a contradictory phenomenon. He didn't have to ponder for too long before Bai Xinyan's surprisingly gentle voice transmitted over. How does it feel to be in an out-of-body state on the psychic wave network? Luonan was still tangled in the problem of interference power. He wasn't in the mood to respond, and he ignored the key elements in her words. Bai Xinyan took it as a tacit agreement. She seemed to sigh and laugh. Only that seemingly open-minded but actually old-fashioned muddle-headed dad of mine thinks that you only have the ability to send your soul. His face has been beaten swollen these past 2 days. He doesn't dare to come out and meet people. Only now did Luonan realize what Bai Xinyan was talking about. So it turned out that the misunderstanding of his out-of-body state being treated as a sent soul had already been corrected? Mr. Bai really hadn't appeared these past few days. He Yuan had told him that she had invited him to teach, but he had been tactfully declined. As for the reason behind this, everyone was clear in their hearts. Even though Luonan was a factor, it was only a negligible amount. Luonan was disinclined to get involved in the conflict between this father and daughter. But then again, a woman who could make such a good-natured old man refuse to forgive her would only make him more vigilant. He was silent for far too long. Bai Xinyan misunderstood his thoughts. You aren't the only young man who hides his head and shows his tail. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's just that it's a bit reckless to act like this to a doctor. Hello, sister. I'm chatting with your boss right now. He Yuan had sent a message to Bai Xinyan, but only to Bai Xinyan. After the latter uttered a rather clear question, he also fell silent. Several seconds later, the inner layer of the sealed helmet lit up without any warning. The guidance process targeted at ability users began. Bai Xinyan's last words came, "Tonight's homework is starting. I hope you won't be lazy." Luonan didn't want to talk to Bai Xinyan before, but now he couldn't help but speak. Even an idiot would know that the problem He Yuan and Bai Xinyan were discussing must have something to do with his lack of interference power. He was the person involved. Why should he be excluded? This was a hospital and he felt like he was diagnosed with a terminal illness. The whole world knew that he was going to die, but he was the only one who was kept in the dark. Wait a minute, the pessimistic attitude of the two in the private conversation last time, wasn't that what was going on? Luonan forgot to accept the guidance for a time. He stared blankly once more. At this time, even with the external neuron protecting his body and the void depository as a buffer, he couldn't stop his chaotic emotions. The next day, Luonan's mind was completely outside of the school curriculum. The symptoms of low interference power and the corresponding ominous omens had been plaguing him since last night. According to what he knew, He Yuan and Bai Xinyan had engaged in a long discussion after the incident, but in the end, they were unable to come up with a definite answer. Correspondingly, his altered schedule was facing a second major overhaul. Luonan could only wait for news before the revisions were completed. Most of the day passed in a muddle, but Luonan didn't receive a new schedule. Club activities began in the middle of the afternoon, and the other students got busy. Even Xie Junping, who had been accompanying him for the past 2 days, had a meeting to attend in the student council. Only Luonan was alive in the order club. He wasn't in the mood, so he didn't have any activities. Luonan was in a really bad mood. He arrived at the treehouse in the withered tree sandbar. He sat in the lounge, staring at the weak light in a daze. At first, he seriously pondered over the problem of interference power, but his train of thought was battered and bruised by one knowledge obstacle after another. And there were far too many special circumstances that could only appear in formatting theory. He couldn't find anyone even if he wanted to ask. In the end, his mood only worsened. He did a rough self-analysis in this helpless situation, trying to dispel these negative emotions on his own. Luonan had to admit that when He Yuan mentioned that there were only 800 daily users in the entire world on the simulator level, he couldn't help but feel a bit of superiority in addition to being nervous. But right now these emotions, which had just sprouted a bit, were directly cut off. He couldn't find any other emotions to fill the void for a time, so a feeling of emptiness and disappointment naturally grew. But this wasn't just a change in status or the like. It involved a more fundamental problem. The question that had suddenly appeared a few days ago without an answer was like the impending night. It caused endless shadows to silently creep over him. Luonan was alone within the shadows. He didn't have any point of support. Only the layer upon layer of chaotic emotions entangled him, forcing him to ask himself once more, did his grandfather's formatting theory really have flaws that were hard to resolve? For example, the uncontrollable growth of soul strength? For example, the lack of interference power towards the material plane? Was there anything else besides these 2 points? Was there an end? Luonan leaned against the inner wall of the tree hole. Practically all of his energy was being devoured by these cruel questions. He was in a trance, unaware of the passage of time. This lasted until his ear vibrated slightly. Someone was contacting him through the hexa-ear. He was a bit surprised when he saw the name of the contact person. Hello, Boss Luo. Are you free right now? Luonan rushed out from the treehouse. He passed through the underwater passageway and high-speed elevator to arrive at the main entrance of Gear. Not long after he arrived, a young man in his 30s arrived along the small path outside the building. It was currently late autumn. The jungle and wetlands were densely interwoven with vegetation, blocking out the sunlight early on. It was much darker than the outside world. The newcomer had deep footsteps and shallow footsteps. He walked quite arduously. When he walked into the area illuminated by the lights in front of gear, he grinned. Beads of sweat had already appeared on his slightly plump face. "Boss Luo, this place of yours wasn't easy to find." "This place is pretty good." Chapter 279. The person who came was none other than the mentally enhanced Papercut, who fought shoulder to shoulder with Luo Nan on the night of the incident at Frost River Reality. Frankly speaking, this old man's appearance was far too ordinary. Luo Nan nearly didn't recognize him when they met again. Fortunately, Luo Nan still remembered this awakened. This awakened had a slightly bloated body as well as that amiable smiling face. Even if Luo Nan didn't receive this treatment most of the time, Papercut's opinion of Luo Nan was mainly that his immature attitude had harmed the team. However, various facts later proved that Luo Nan was correct, so there was no need for this opinion to exist. "Just call me Papercut. It feels weird to add Mr. to my nickname." Papercut grinned out of habit. "Then don't call me Boss Luo." "Boss Luo is your nickname, right?" Papercut's smile was very infectious. "I know that you have quite a few nicknames, but I won't change it. Everything goes according to the flow of the tongue." Luo Nan was a bit embarrassed. Papercut waved his hand before Luo Nan could say anything. "Okay. Don't get tangled up in these minor details. I came to teach today. I'm sorry. Something happened at the last minute, so I pushed the time forward." Luo Nan responded politely, "I'm the one troubling you." He invited Papercut into the building as he spoke. Papercut was one of Luo Nan's teachers for general knowledge training. He was responsible for imparting the practical course Soul Strength Activation Techniques. Papercut emphasized when talking about the course, "This course is actually quite late. The reason why it was brought forward. It's because of my special circumstances. My interference power is low. Do I need to do a field experiment to verify it?" Papercut was stunned. He turned to look at Luo Nan with a bit of helplessness. "Boss Luo, you're still young. You think too much." Luo Nan blinked. "Am I wrong?" "You really are." Luo Nan couldn't be blamed for thinking too much. The introduction of this course in his old schedule clearly stated that it was a practical course on mental interference with matter. Now that there was a problem with his interference power, Papercut still deliberately brought up the course. The reason for this was very clear. Could this be considered a re-examination of a terminal illness? That being said, Papercut's course itself was quite interesting. With such a nickname, Papercut's specialty was to use a special method to cut out paper tools and use soul force to endow them with all sorts of functions. Papercut had revealed his hand to Luo Nan in the tea room on the 3rd floor of gear. He manipulated a small paper doll and performed a comical pantomime. Then he performed a set of military boxing on the table. His movements were agile and lifelike as if he really had a life of his own. The little paper man's strength was also quite impressive. The teacups on the table were kicked all over the place. In the end, he even practiced stone lock, throwing the teacups up and down as if he was a street performer. Even though Luo Nan's mind was in a mess, he couldn't help but laugh when he saw the mini paper man's strenuous performance. His mood unwittingly turned for the better. This is the most basic application. After that, it is further divided into activation style and manipulation style. The former focused on simulating spirituality, while the latter focused on precise manipulation. I'm an animation type, so I'm more casual and often do some auxiliary work. I've seen your information. You're a precision type spiritual enhanced, and your pure observational abilities are so capricious. It's very likely that you're talented in precise manipulation. Papercut began to paint a beautiful future for Luo Nan. The society has combat machines specifically manufactured for the control class. Actually, every control class should be an extremely powerful engineer. They can fight and repair. They are powerful and safe. Luo Nan's eyes drooped and he laughed. In order to do this, he first had to satisfy the basic requirements of interference power. If soul strength was unable to effectively interfere with the material plane, then everything else was meaningless. Speaking of repairs, however, he suddenly thought of the Tai Chi ball of Divine Yu Jim. The core component of the Tai Chi ball seemed to be a precise machine. Luo Nan had heard Shui Lei mention it, but in the end, it hadn't been repaired. It was still tossed in the Daoguan. This matter needed to be handled properly. The maintenance engineers of the society were certainly a level stronger than those outside. Luo Nan's mind was a bit scattered, but he quickly recovered. He concentrated on listening to Papercut's lecture. Today, whether it was training, teaching, or symptom review, Papercut only taught elementary subjects. He taught the basic techniques of soul strength acting on materials. Papercut chose a special kind of talisman paper for his practice. It was said that it was obtained from another psychic of the society, Mr. Gao, whom Luo Nan had yet to meet. It was made from specially cultivated peach wood and bamboo pulp. The ratio was extremely meticulous, and it was one of the materials most suited to converge with soul strength. As for Papercut himself, he had a meticulous and patient personality. From the very beginning he began to manually operate the talisman. He broke down the steps and explained the few special points of force for the soul strength to be used clearly. From the principles to the operation, everything was extremely clear. Logically speaking, the difficulty shouldn't be high with such thorough preparations. However, the development of the situation simply followed the most pessimistic predictions. Luo Nan's learning process didn't go smoothly. It was already 6 o'clock in the evening. Luo Nan and Papercut held their breaths and focused their minds under the illumination of the lights in the tea room. They stared at the crude paper man on the table. This little thing, which had just been cut, stood up shakily, taking steps with great difficulty. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Then it fell to the ground, unable to get up again. Oh no! Luo Nan slapped the table with both hands, bringing about a gentle breeze that lifted the paper man up. Then there was the stream of air that Luo Nan exhaled with a long sigh. The little thing fluttered under the table. This series of movements was much more nimble than its previous struggling appearance. Luo Nan knew that he had lost control of himself. He hurriedly said, "Sorry," and got up, wanting to pick up the paper man. Papercut held him down. With a thought, the small paper man 5 meters away immediately came to life. It was like a ruffian monkey. It leaped and hopped, climbing the table leg and charged onto the table in a few steps. Luo Nan felt more and more ashamed when he compared the two. He laughed bitterly and sat back on the chair. He looked up into the sky and stared blankly. This doesn't make sense. Papercut scratched his head endlessly, but he couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he tried. His patience hadn't run out yet, so he pulled Luo Nan and said, "How about we sort it out a bit more and start from the beginning?" Luo Nan had no reason to give up when faced with such a teacher. He forced himself to raise his spirits and grabbed the small paper man on the table. His fingertips tapped across the paper man's head and torso in succession. There are a total of 4 soul strength focus points. They form 6 basic resonance lines to realize basic control. Luo Nan paused a bit upon speaking up to this point. He then said, "This is actually a kind of irregular deformation of a prism. It belongs to the structural changes in the operation of energy and information. The paper man is just a medium. The basic prism structure is the support. You chose to start with this structure. Is it because it's a bit similar to my format pyramid?" Chapter 280. Luo Nan calmed down. He fiddled with the small paper man between his fingers, then tossed it back onto the table a few seconds later. This is because the prismatic structure requires a certain amount of strength. If the strength you gave me was equivalent to a steel structure, then what I gave me would be a spider web at most. Strength. It's strength. That's right. Papercut was helpless. Of course, he knew that the crux of the problem was the strength of the structure. If he were to investigate further, it would be the problem of the interference of the mental plane with the material plane. But these were all superficial phenomena. Who could tell him that a mentally enhanced user with superb mental senses, who could send his soul out of his body as if it were nothing, and whose mental cultivation had nearly reached the B rank standard, couldn't even do the most basic thing of controlling objects with his mind? What was going on? In the end, there was no answer to this question. Not only was Papercut unable to get any results, but Bai Xinyan, who knew about this long ago, kept it a secret when Luo Nan went to the hospital for treatment. She didn't give Luo Nan any information that could be used as a reference. Luo Nan originally wanted to ask He Yuan, but after some thought he gave up on this thought for the time being. Problems on the mental plane were largely self-perception. If even he couldn't figure out what was going on, then it was impossible to count on others. The terrible state of affairs undoubtedly affected Luo Nan's mood. The following training sessions at the Frost River waterway were simply disastrous. The quality was extremely terrible. The amount of time Luo Nan could last was even less than in the morning. Compared to last night, his endurance had dropped by 20%. Luo Nan saw the relevant results and made preparations for additional training. However, Bai Xinyan didn't express anything. She let him pass the final moments of his time in the healing pod in peace. I still have to learn new things tonight. It's best if I take a nap and relax. Alright, don't be late. Bai Xinyan made medical records as she waved her hand to let Luonan leave. In the past, Luonan would probably rejoice, but now he thought about it a bit more. Was this attitude a part of happy, fast healing? Sure enough, when a person is about to die, nothing is taboo? Luonan thought about the results of his peeping from 2 days ago, and his mood turned even worse. He really wanted to crack open Bai Xinyan's skull and figure out just what kind of state he was in her eyes. Or perhaps he wanted to peep again. The problem was, how could he have such an opportunity every day? Luonan left Renai Hospital with his mind in a jumbled mess. Tonight, he had already made an appointment to go to Basan Manor to learn breathing techniques from Hallmaster Xiu. Last time he went to the Daoguan, Luonan had the phantom flying car as a means of transportation. He had already returned the flying car to Xie Junping this morning. Right now he was riding a low-altitude public transport, rushing towards the River Wu district under the curtain of night. The first thing Luonan did after getting into the car was give his aunt a call. He informed her that he would be staying at the Daoguan tonight. In fact, he had already used Shui Lei's tiger skin to ask for leave from his aunt yesterday to confirm the situation of not returning at night. But he knew his aunt's temperament very well. Right now he had to make another phone call to comfort her. Otherwise, according to Madame Luo Shuqing, she would have personally brought him to pay a visit to Gym Master Xiu for his first official lesson. By the time he finally ended the call, they were already halfway through the journey. At this hour, the bus was no longer as crowded as it was during the day. There were only a dozen or so people on the bus. They were all groggy or playing games with their wristbands. Luonan sat at the back. He lowered his head and fiddled with his things. However, he was different from the others. He wasn't fiddling with an electronic device in his hand. Instead, he was fiddling with a thin greenish-yellow paper. This was a special talisman paper that Papercut had given him. It was personally made by the psychic Mr. Gao. The special material was more suitable for the transmission of energy and information. In the hands of a true expert, this talisman paper could be used to deal with enemies. It was a bit extravagant to use it for practice. But it would be fine if he could really get some ideas out of it. Luonan followed the technique Papercut taught him. He slowly operated and tore the talisman paper into a palm-sized paper man. The incorporeal prismatic structure took shape as a whole. At the same time, abundant soul strength poured down, completely submerging the paper man. Luonan could sense the texture of the paper, the rough edges of the torn paper, the crisscrossing creases. Not a single detail could be hidden from him. But under the effect of soul strength, the paper man in his palm merely rolled around in a half-dead state. It then became motionless. His soul strength nearly crushed his body. It seemed to have no practical significance on the paper man. It's still like this. What? Back at Frost River Reality, his support for Shui Weiluan and the other special police officers was no problem at all. The effects of controlling the Wraith sign, influencing cat eyes, and even his own mental attack were real. But why couldn't it work when it truly fell on materials? Luonan looked out the window. The colorful night curtain of the metropolis was like fluttering cotton. It was empty and hard to see the real thing. His mind naturally extended out, passing through the deep void and flowing within the sea of lights of the metropolis. His perception became more real. Within the clairvoyance of his perception, there were tens of thousands of living beings, the convergence of stars, and the meandering Milky Way. There were marvelous layers within, majestic and hazy. It was like a grand world, gorgeous and magnificent. But when such a grand structure of the Star River was cast onto the small paper man, not even a ripple was stirred up. The prismatic structure was still as strong as a spider web. He couldn't even feel any connection between the two. An incorporeal and ice-cold barrier separated his consciousness from the real thing. They were infinitely close, but they had never truly fused. It was like a dream and reality. Could it be that this power was all fabricated? Could it be that the crazy ravings of his grandfather only existed on the plane of imagination? No, this didn't make sense. The beam of light from Luonan's consciousness cut through the Star River. It definitely wasn't limited to a radius of 1 or 2 kilometers. There were many fulcrum points within the enormous metropolis. There were normal people, awakened ones, ablatum knights, crows, darksider races. They were real, giving him feedback at all times. How could this kind of perception be a dream? Luonan arrived at the Divine Yu Gym above Basan building in a daze. It was already 9 o'clock in the evening. The students of the Daoguan had long since dispersed. Only Shuelei remained here. He came out early to welcome Luonan. Nanster, the gym master is waiting for you inside. Luonan suppressed his chaotic state of mind. He was a bit embarrassed. I'm late. Not at all. It's mainly because the Daoguan doesn't accept new business. We finished our business at 8 o'clock. You're actually quite early. It's mainly because you're just getting started. You'll need some time. Relax. I'll be your protector tonight. Shuelei pulled Luonan inside. The lights in the front and middle courtyards of the Daoguan had already been turned off. It was late in the autumn night. Luonan walked along the winding corridor. Luckily Shuelei's voice was loud. It diluted this feeling quite a bit. Luonan was quite baffled. You're spending the night at the Daoguan as well? Of course. I've always been the gym master's assistant. Yes, I'm also an interpreter. Luonan and Shuelei had already entered the backyard in the blink of an eye. The light of the humanoid stone lanterns illuminated the front courtyard. Light and shadow separated, like an exquisite oil painting. Chapter 281. Luonan and Shuelei walked into the room. There were no lights on inside. The lights from outside only illuminated the entrance. Most of the other areas were filled with shadows, making it hard to see clearly. Shuelei turned his head to look for Xiao Xinyu. Luonan relied on the advantage of his mental senses to lock onto Xiao Xinyu's position a step earlier. Xiao Xinyu was sitting on the cork floor, leaning against the wall on one side of the corridor. His left leg was crossed and his right leg was upright. His sitting posture was casual. Not far away from him was the Tai Chi ball. He didn't know if it was because of the environment, but the current Xiao Xinyu was silent, almost gloomy. He did not react to the two young men who came in. Dojo Master Nanster is here. Shuelei finally saw where Xiao Xinyu was. He walked over and whispered. Xiao Xinyu grunted, then let's begin. Her straightforward and direct attitude made Luonan and Shuelei a bit stupefied. No matter what the two youngsters thought, Xiao Xinyu simply got up from the floor and walked to Luonan's side. His figure was tall and thin. He was a head taller than Luonan, who had yet to fully develop. He gave off quite a bit of pressure when he stood. The time I requested is from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., a total of 6 hours. Ideally, 6 hours a day would be enough for the first stage of learning. I asked you to come a little earlier today so that I can teach you basic techniques and also do some tests to get a feel for you. Luonan obediently complied. Although this gym master Xiao did not engage in any pleasantries or opening remarks, going straight to the main topic rather strangely, his words were still logical and clear. It was unknown where Shuelei's so-called translation came from. Luonan immediately complied with Xiao Xinyu's request. He lay flat on the sleeping mat that had already been prepared. Shuelei, on the other hand, lit a pot of incense in a very exaggerated manner, saying that it had the effect of helping people relax. The light was dim and the fragrance lingered in the air. In such an environment, it was not difficult to relax. Luonan's eyes narrowed slightly. He slowly adjusted his breathing and soon entered a state. At this time, Xiao Xinyu suddenly asked, "Have you learned other breathing techniques before?" "Yes, there is." Luonan had been practicing the chanting breathing technique since he was young. The majority of its functions were in visualization, but he also started with breathing. Also, he had obtained an extremely good demonstration from this inconceivable little girl Ruiwen some time ago. She had comprehended the rhythm of soul breathing. Soul breathing is also considered breathing, right? Luonan believed that he had some experience. Xiao Xinyu continued to ask, "Have you entered meditation?" "You mean the stationary state?" "Yes." At the side, Shuelei said happily, "That's good. You already have a very good foundation. You'll definitely improve at lightning speed." Xiao Xinyu glanced at Shuelei but did not say anything. He just let Luonan continue to relax. At the same time, Xiao Xinyu began to explain to Luonan the essentials of adjusting his breathing. In the beginning, Luonan only spoke in general terms. But under this sort of atmosphere, Luonan subconsciously and unconsciously followed the methods he had described. He carried out experiments. Xiao Xinyu probably had an accurate grasp of Luonan's state. He suddenly changed the way he spoke. He was shorter, directly touching on the deviation that occurred during Luonan's attempts, and he corrected it. Sometimes she would directly reach out and press on Luonan's body. She wanted Luonan's breathing and thoughts to be mobilized and concentrated in these areas. In the beginning, the taste of having someone controlling his breathing was unpleasant. Luo Nan controlled his breathing as he split his attention to receive guidance. His nerves were taut and there was no way he could relax at all. But Luo Nan had a foundation in the end. He soon discovered that many of the essentials Xiao Xinyu imparted to him happened to coincide with his current understanding. It gave him quite a bit of foresight when it came to certain details, and the specific control of his breathing became more unhurried. Moreover, Xiao Xinyu's teachings were not harsh on the details. It was like a faintly discernible lamp that led Luo Nan in front of him, so that he would not get lost. Luo Nan still followed Luo Nan's own habits and actions. It didn't take long for Luo Nan to adapt. His mind settled down. He controlled the intensity of his breathing, making it faintly discernible between his mouth and nose. His mind first resided in his mouth and nose. Then it moved to his throat, chest, lower abdomen, tailbone, and so on. He also visualized in reverse, changing back and forth. In the end, his breath became continuous. It was impossible to distinguish the direction, and it gradually enshrouded his entire body. Luo Nan's body became slightly hot under this marvelous feeling. It was as if he was wrapped in a warm cloud. It was similar to a sauna, but it was not that stuffy. It was rather transparent. In the end, Luo Nan's energy was completely focused on sensing the changes. He naturally blocked out Xiao Xinyu's whispers. In the end, even his body's senses became fuzzy. It was as if Luo Nan had transformed into a cloud, drifting in the void. The cloud chi expanded and contracted, showing the difference between inside and outside. But when it came down to it, it was a rhythm of entering and exiting. That's right, it was a bit like Rui Wen. Her breath resonated at the pinnacle of perfection, and her body and soul were blended together. Luo Nan suddenly opened his eyes as if he had awoken from a dream. Shui Lei followed Xiao Xinyu's instructions and checked the time on his wristband. 5 minutes and 20 seconds. Shui Lei smiled. From the time you laid down until now, it's been a total of 320 seconds. Luo Nan was stunned. That's short. He thought that time had passed very quickly, at least an hour or two, but he didn't expect it to be so short. If one only counted the time when he was fully engrossed, it would be less than a minute. Xiao Xinyu glanced at Shui Lei's wristband. 7 seconds. 7 seconds? Spirit galloping, heart illuminating the 8 extremities. 7 seconds isn't bad, but it's not short either. Luo Nan didn't understand at all. Translator Shui finally appeared at this time. He praised, "Sure enough, there is a foundation. The meditative state you just entered is actually a process of body self-examination. It's like turning on a device, reading and loading. The faster your brain, the higher the efficiency. 7 seconds of inner vision, obtaining the edict of void and stillness, is quite amazing." Gym Master Xiao declined to comment on Shui Lei's words. You can't rely on the void. You can't stay full for long. Remember that breathing rhythm. We will proceed to the next step. Though it was hard to understand, it really did seem quite amazing. Luo Nan couldn't help but have a different kind of confidence in Xiao Xinyu's teachings. He recalled the feeling from before and nodded solemnly. 2 minutes later, Luo Nan entered the strange state of his body's invisibility once more under Xiao Xinyu's guidance. His body was like a cloud. Warm heat was constantly accumulating, but the rhythm of entering and exiting was there. It expanded and contracted all the time. The heat was not static, but it flowed endlessly. Luo Nan couldn't see it clearly at first, but after familiarizing himself with it, his senses grew sharper. Slowly, he was able to perceive substance within the invisibility of the cloud. According to Xiao Xinyu's theory, meditative state was just the initial stage of cognition. Cultivation required one to eliminate the established concept of the body, using the feeling of a meditative state to reconstruct it. This wasn't to let one's imagination run wild in the mind. The body was still the body and the aura was still the aura. One just needed to take a complete form. Luo Nan was familiar with this method. Wasn't this his method of drawing simple sketches? He didn't care about the fineness of the form. He focused on the charm and characteristics. However, Xiao Xinyu gave him a clear image. Chapter 282. His body was a mountain that was densely planted with thick soil. It could bear the weight of sunlight, rain and dew as well as resist storms and lightning. She was like flowing water, meandering and flowing. It could accumulate the spiritual beauty of a mountain and give life to all living things. Here, the body was the foundation, the most important. It determined the structure of matter just like a mountain. There were always ups and downs. Vital qi was a function, determined by the body's foundation. It was like the flow of water, following the shape of a mountain, showing the warmth and coldness of yin and yang. The two of them referenced each other. As the state of concentration deepened, the minute details gradually became clearer. The distinction between illusion and reality was made, and some of it appeared. It was as if a painting of mountains and rivers had unfolded before Luonan's eyes. Clear streams meandered within the unbroken mountain terrain, following the flow. Everywhere it passed, there were some places that could stay, some places that could move, and some places that could be used were the complete opposite. With the difference, the feeling of substance was even clearer. Gradually, there were some places where the energy was circulating and accumulating, like a calm lake or deep pool, dark whirlpools forming. This was the so-called aperture point that Xiao Xinyu wanted him to pay special attention to. It was a place where spiritual energy was stored and nurtured. Luonan's consciousness gradually confirmed his position. He even compared it with the established concept of his body, the top of his head, his chest, his lower abdomen, as well as the palms of his hands and the soles of his feet. These acupoints seemed to resonate with each other, causing ripples to appear. The shock wave sliced through, and the cloud-like illusory feeling gradually retreated. His body's perception reappeared, but compared to before, he already had a completely new understanding. Just like that old philosophical proposition, seeing a mountain is a mountain, seeing water is water. Seeing a mountain is not a mountain, seeing water is not water. Seeing a mountain is still a mountain, seeing water is still water. Luonan's mind was muddled when he heard Xiao Xinyu speak of these things. But now that he truly encountered them, he felt that he understood them quite well. However, Xiao Xinyu had only mentioned this step. He did not explicitly state what to do next. Luonan's thoughts were a bit scattered. Originally, he wanted to leave the fixed space and ask Xiao Xinyu about the trick to the next step. However, the resonating pattern between his acupuncture points and his body made him think of Rue Wen's marvelous technique of body and soul merging. However, after experiencing it in detail, it was still different. Luonan was far from reaching Rue Wen's realm of mixing and merging as one. The resonance within his body only occurred between a few acupuncture points. With the acupoints as the ends, they were connected to each other, forming a blurry structure. It was a little chaotic, a little complicated, and also a little familiar. If he made some slight adjustments, Luonan's body still felt a bit fuzzy right now, so he subconsciously viewed it as a correctable drawing. He moved the endpoints, merged the lines, and made a few adjustments. The fuzzy and chaotic structure became orderly, turning into a pyramid-like structure of vertebral bodies. Luonan suddenly felt that something was off. He wanted to open his eyes, but a shout came from the outside world at this time. Continue. The voice was deep, and it suppressed Luonan's surging mind. Luonan's mind swayed a few times, but in the end he maintained his fixed state. At this moment, the image of mountains and rivers had become blurry and empty, replaced by a more familiar scene. A pyramid rotated in the void. To be precise, it was the format pyramid, a visualization diagram. The sudden change in imagery caused Luonan to be a bit perplexed. His senses were also affected and became chaotic. But this situation didn't persist for too long. The visualization diagram rotated in his fixed state, and all the chaotic information was collected within. It was orderly and orderly as if there was a central axis. The bones, muscles, and even the trillions of blood vessels and fibers of his entire body moved. A single movement led to 100 movements, 1,000 movements, and 10,000 movements. There was no chaos at all. Luonan was no stranger to this feeling. He had been guided by the archetype format in the complete version of the Frost River waterway system some time ago at Frost River Reality. He ignited the virtual format of fire, using it as an axis and many aspects linked together. The image of mountains and rivers and the format of fire were very good, but they couldn't compare to the significance of the visualization diagram for Luonan. Luonan had already gotten used to coexisting with the visualization diagram over the past 5 years. The visualization diagram represented formatting theory, and it was the truth that he revered. Therefore, the visualization diagram occupied the most central position without a doubt when it came out. The other sensations either revolved around the visualization diagram, fluctuating and fluctuating, or they were simply annihilated. Luckily, Luonan still remembered what he came here for tonight. Though his direction was a bit off, the roots of his breathing were still there. His breathing rhythm was only messed up for a moment before it returned to normal. Though the image of mountains and rivers was already blurry and indistinct, the feeling of the circulation and accumulation of vital energy was still there. It was just that the natural charm that followed the flow of energy within the closed visualization diagram was gone. There were only layers of steaming hot air that accumulated endlessly, heading toward the inscribed sphere in the central region of the visualization diagram. In Luonan's visualization mode, if he only cared about himself, the inscribed sphere would contain his internal organs and the circulation of blood and energy. And according to Xiao Xinyu's teachings, vital energy symbolized the activation of bodily functions. What would it look like to gather vital energy like this? Xiao Xinyu did not explain. The visualization diagram rotated endlessly, and at the same time, layer after layer of vital energy surged inside. The momentum was vast and there seemed to be some changes. But there were no changes. The inscribed sphere was empty. It was like a black hole. No matter how much vital energy and heat accumulated, it was devoured by this emptiness. There was no end to it. Luonan's mind followed the circulation of vital energy and entered the inscribed sphere. This was the first time he had learned formatting theory. Moreover, it was natural. Clearly, he had made great progress in the field of visualization. This should have been a good thing, but the scene of his inner vision caused Luonan's mind to stiffen. He was flooded with that dark color that he could not tell was real or illusory. It was hard for him to feel anything else. Luonan's current state of mind was absolutely not suitable for meditating. But the shout from outside suppressed the great waves that could make him leave his meditative state. It also firmly pressed him in this space, allowing him to see things more clearly. Voila! Voila! Countless thick chains penetrated a dark color within the depths of the space. They crisscrossed and intertwined with each other, forming a complex structure that made one's scalp go numb. It was like an inescapable net. It was like a black prison. Yes, the inscribed sphere of the visualization diagram was also where the heavily chained crow came from. But Luonan never imagined that the seemingly endless chain that could penetrate through the layers of the void would actually have this sort of appearance, this sort of form, hidden deep within the visualization diagram. Faced with such a deep space, the surging vital energy that he had felt before was simply insignificant smoke. Wisps of energy curled up in spirals, and under the enormous internal pressure, the vital energy sank deep into the depths. There was a bit of fiery light in the depths where the chains interweaved. It seeped through the gaps of the chains, but Luonan's mind could not feel any heat. The cold chains sucked away all the heat halfway, leaving only the flickering fiery light that hooked a bit of his mind. It was faintly discernible. My heart is a prison. Suddenly, Luonan thought of the first phrase of the 16 words formula. The crashing vibrations rang out once more, and Luonan's mind was finally unable to control itself. It was sent out of his meditative state. The image of mountains and rivers, the visualization diagram, all vanished without a trace. Instead, his lower abdomen felt a bit hot, but that was all. Luonan blinked his eyes blankly, and the first person he saw was Xiao Xinyu. Shuele was next to the gym master. He was tongue-tied and it took a while before he asked, why are you sitting up? Chapter 283. Sit up? Yes, he had sat up and he was even sitting in the pyramid posture, completely ignoring the mountain and river imagery that Xiao Xinyu had taught him. Luonan gaped, speechless. On the other hand, Xiao Xinyu was not all that surprised. He looked Luonan up and down a few times, then slowly said, breathing in and out. Fusing new and old techniques into a furnace is a good thing. Shuele let out a sigh of relief. That's good. Unexpectedly, Xiao Xinyu's next words were, it's a pity that I can't use my skills on myself. Shuele blinked. Dojo master, I can't translate what you're saying. He looked at Luonan. Luonan's head was lowered in contemplation. He didn't react at all. In the end, he could only ask, Master, you mean? Xiao Xinyu didn't respond to Shuele. He gazed at Luonan for some time before saying, I taught you to visualize the image of mountains and rivers, but I didn't tell you to take out an iceberg. The weather is cold and the ground is frozen. When water swims through the cracks in the ice, most of it will still melt. Water can moisturize things, but ice can crush people. Luonan pondered for a moment. He raised his head and said, Please guide me, gym master. Shuele looked at the gym master, then looked at Luonan. He finally confirmed that he, the translator, was about to lose his job. He shrunk to the side, not uttering a word. He just pricked up his ears. Xiao Xinyu pondered as he said, Rome wasn't built in a single day. I don't really understand your visualization technique, But I vaguely feel that from the inside to the outside, it's very strict and majestic. It's a magnificent sight. This is of course very good. It's a pity that this iceberg doesn't truly belong to you. The more majestic the iceberg is, the smaller you are. People are affected by the law, and the law is affected by people. This is your problem. This dojo master Shio had never been good with words. When he conversed with others, he would always say what he was thinking. His reasoning was not very clear, and he often used metaphors, making it hard for others to listen. Shuelei's eyes spun as he listened to Luo Nan. Luckily, Luo Nan combined his own circumstances with the heavily intersecting dark chains and the prison in his heart. He had a general understanding of what was going on. It was precisely because he understood what Xiao Xinyu said that he was truly amazed by Xiao Xinyu's eyesight. This dojo master was undoubtedly truly capable. But he was also more and more confused about the underlying causes of his family's situation. A while passed before Luo Nan asked, "Why doesn't it belong to me? I'm the one cultivating it." "Is it really you?" Xiao Xinyu's rhetorical question left Luo Nan speechless. From the first day he started researching formatting theory, he had been walking a path that relied on external forces. The spiritual medicine, the dark side of life form, the sacrificial framework. These external items had played a decisive role behind the rapid growth of his soul strength. All he did was set up a shelf. Even his arrogance was learned from his grandfather. While Luo Nan was in a daze, Xiao Xinyu slowly stood up and walked to the side of the Tai Chi ball. There was no light in the room. From a distance, only a blurry figure could be seen. Luo Nan and Shuelei glanced at each other. They both got up and walked over. Xiao Xinyu didn't care about them. He directly moved the Tai Chi ball, causing it to spin in the bowl tray on the ground. The metal ball, which was half the height of a person and weighed more than 100 kilograms, spun with great momentum. Even the cork floor was shaking. "This is an iceberg." Luo Nan nodded. He automatically replaced iceberg with formatting theory in his mind. "Now you have this." Xiao Xinyu continued to speak. He pointed at the tray below. Due to the spinning heavy metal ball, the tray below swayed endlessly as well. Luo Nan stared at it without blinking. He took the tray and compared it to his own situation. This analogy was very intuitive. Even the ignorant Shuelei understood. "Gym Master, are you saying that Nanster's cultivation speed is too fast? He can't get rid of his tail, so his luck isn't smooth?" But then Xiao Xinyu shook his head. "He's being rejected." Shuelei was immediately stupefied. Luo Nan suddenly raised his head from the side. Xiao Xinyu's palm pressed against the outer edge of the metal ball, and the rolling and spinning ball came to a stop with a hum. Xiao Xinyu had already opened the outer shell of the ball while it was still swaying slightly. He took out the complex mechanical device from within the cavity. "You should be talking about this." Xiao Xinyu spoke calmly. "To put it simply, the cultivation of a human is like drawing a circle. The self is the center of the circle. Layer by layer, the circle expands outwards. The range of control grows larger and larger, and the weight grows heavier and heavier. But no matter what, the heart must be unhindered up and down. Following the heart is the right path. If it's heavy and cumbersome, difficult to move, then it's called being too big to get rid of." Luo Nan first looked at the mechanical device. He was lost in thought for a while, and then he looked at Xiao Xinyu. "Then right now you're just a burden. You're a carrier." Xiao Xinyu placed the mechanical device back into the cavity, and he let the metal ball spin once more. "I think you know just how much strength you have at the center of the circle." Luo Nan thought of the inscribed sphere's depths. There was a mass of fire that was completely devoid of heat. He took a deep breath. "But I'm still inside. Only a part of it." Xiao Xinyu responded faintly. "This technique isn't yours. You're just endlessly pouring water on it, turning it into layer after layer of ice cubes, making it expand even more, making it even heavier. Perhaps you can borrow its power, but you must do so under its existing rules. You can't overstep them in the slightest. Unfortunately, I haven't seen any content regarding the feedback of the human body within its rules. The human body is the foundation of cultivation. It has a soul and is incorporeal. It's nothing more than a pavilion in the air. Yet you've built it to such a scale, reversing the real and the false. This is the main reason why your body and soul are unbalanced." Luo Nan was a bit conflicted by the first half of Xiao Xinyu's description, but when he heard the words "must do so under its existing rules," he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He was stunned on the spot. The doubts he had on the bus on the way here were illuminated by the lightning, and they were torn to shreds. Yeah, why didn't he think of this? Sensing the river of stars, the feedback from his believers, these were solid achievements. They were all changes on the mental plane, and they existed within the framework of formatting theory. On the contrary, he had entered the rules set by President Ouyang Chen in the simulator layer of the psychic wave network. His control over the small paper men involved the material plane, a domain that formatting theory was unable to touch upon. One was efficacious and the other was ineffective. The true reason lay here. Though this was only Xiao Xinyu's personal opinion, he did not know the concrete contents of formatting theory. He also did not know the awkward situation Luonan faced. For Xiao Xinyu to be able to make an inference, and for it to coincide seamlessly with reality, was something that could hardly be described as a coincidence. Luonan stood there in a daze. The darkness of the training field surrounded him, and the sound of the metal ball grinding and turning crushed all the way into his heart. Xiao Xinyu's voice seeped in like fine sand. My generation has been influenced by external techniques. At first, they are not good enough to be called imprisonment. Next, they are not good enough to be called overturning. Finally, they are not good enough to be called parasitism. Your current situation is probably somewhere between imprisonment and overturning. Gym Master. This was the first time Luonan interrupted Xiao Xinyu's speech since the start of tonight's lesson. Luonan stared fixedly at the wizened middle-aged man's sunken eye sockets. It was deep and gloomy and it was hard to distinguish color. But there was a heavy force that pressed down on Luonan's heart. Luonan used the strength of his teeth to speak. Gym Master, are you saying that the technique I cultivate in is flawed? Xiao Xinyu's answer was probably the most fluent that Luonan could remember. Chapter 284. Cough Gym Master. On the other side, Shuelei was a bit flustered. He knew the obsession in Luonan's heart. In layman terms, anything that involved formatting theory was Luonan's reverse scale. He was really afraid that Luonan would turn around and leave in anger. He did his best to salvage the situation. He hoped that Xiao Xinyu would not speak too harshly and leave some leeway for Luonan to turn around. Unfortunately, his eyes were blocked in the darkness. Even if he did, the possibility of Xiao Xinyu changing his words was close to zero, given his temperament. The Tai Chi ball continued to spin endlessly in the bowl tray. The luminous patterns on its surface gradually became clear amidst the grinding sounds. Xiao Xinyu turned his gaze. He had no intention of speaking again. As for Luonan, the end of his gaze stopped on Xiao Xinyu's face. He had been like this ever since Luonan said, without a doubt. But he did not make the next move. He stood in place like a stone statue. Even his breathing was sealed. Shuelei looked left and right. In the end he could not continue. He could only hang his head and pray in secret, hoping that the heavens would open their eyes and not cause trouble. For a time, there was only the grinding Tai Chi ball in the spacious room. It rolled from one heart to another. An unknown amount of time passed. Luonan, whose entire body was stiff, suddenly took a step forward. He raised a hand and broke through the incorporeal layer of stone. He reached out and pressed the rolling Tai Chi ball. The metal ball rubbed against his palm. Due to the uneven application of external force, the metal ball bounced twice, nearly flipping over. It stabilized with great difficulty, rocking back and forth in the bowl tray. The luminous patterns naturally disappeared. Xiao Xinyu furrowed his brows and raised his eyes to meet Luonan's gaze. The gym master didn't like to be disturbed when he was fiddling with the Tai Chi ball. Shuelei's heart beat wildly. He wanted to cry but no tears came out of the situation before him. A few days ago he suggested that Luonan come to the Daoguan to learn breathing techniques. He never imagined that this would happen. But the following development was not as pessimistic as Shuelei imagined. Luonan was not angry at being criticized for his formatting theory. Xiao Xinyu did not get angry when the Tai Chi ball stopped spinning. When the monotonous sound that could move people's hearts faded away, Luonan's whisper grew clearer. Gym Master Xiao, the only flaw in my technique is that it does not take the body into consideration. Am I right? I don't believe that it is your technique. Xiao Xinyu also stretched out his hand and pressed it against the Tai Chi ball. This was the second time he had done something similar. At the same time, Luonan found it hard to accept these words. At this moment, both of their palms were pressed against the Tai Chi ball. The metal ball became even quieter, unable to move. In this subtle contest of strength, Xiao Xinyu slowly replied, the right path of cultivation in the world should be from the inside to the outside, from me to him. Water moves according to the mountains, qi moves according to the body, and the charm is within. What does it have to do with me, if it's just a myriad of phenomena outside the body? Shui Lei felt dizzy listening to Xiao Xinyu's pronouncements, but Luo Nan understood each and every word. Not only was it personally related, but Xiao Xinyu's words touched upon a concept Luo Nan was most familiar with. Meh. Why did it sound so ironic? The 16 words written on the title page of Grandpa's notebook were all preceded by the word I. My heart is a prison, my heart is a furnace, my heart calls for a mirror, my heart calls for a country. Wasn't formatting theory rooted in me? How could it not be? It was this root that caused Luo Nan to blurt out his rebuttal. It can't be. When I cultivate, I always use the me as the axis. What do you use to determine the me? Xiao Xinyu did not give Luo Nan the chance to continue arguing. He directly pierced through Luo Nan's final line of defense. The me of cultivation has the structure of the body and bones, the circulation of energy and blood, and the changes of movement and stillness. It must exhaust the nature of matter. Only by being unprepared can one guarantee every step and every seal without any mistakes. You have failed to do this. Luo Nan stopped talking. He listened in silence. Using pure consciousness as a reference without any material foundation, it is only natural for one to make mistakes. If it were someone else, their body and soul would be out of balance to a certain degree. They would be restrained and it would be difficult to move even an inch. But you are like a towering iceberg, expanding layer by layer. There are no signs of restrictions. Xiao Xinyu did not continue speaking after this, but his meaning was clear and unmistakable. No matter how vast and powerful the structure of the mental plane is, the core mechanism that increases and decreases changes cannot be linked to the person. How can it be said to be yours? Luo Nan's eyes drooped as he stared at the Tai Chi ball in front of him. He was a bit lost in thought. Seeing that the room was about to enter a state of silence, Shui Lei could no longer hold back. If there really is such a problem, then it must be adjusted. Gym Master, this can be adjusted, right? Shui Lei's choice of words was very particular, but Xiao Xinyu's response was very straightforward. External techniques cannot be used by me. It is not too late to start anew and return to the right path. Luo Nan raised his head upon hearing this and looked straight at Xiao Xinyu. His face was wooden and expressionless. Shui Lei saw that the situation was far from good. He rushed forward a step and grabbed Luo Nan's right arm. You can mull over this a bit more. Luo Nan knew what Shui Lei was nervous about, but he was not actually angry. He was just thinking about his grandfather. It was probably because Xiao Xinyu's emaciated physique was a bit similar to his grandfather's. Luo Nan's thoughts drifted to the sanatorium. There was an insane old man there, tormented by illness to the point that he was no longer human. His life was nearing its end. What had caused all of this? Luo Nan was not a doctor. He was unable to make an accurate judgment. However, there was an obvious fact right now. Luo Nan had previously confirmed that he was agitated by anger, but it was meaningless to improve the old man's illness. On the other hand, if Luo Nan admitted the flaws of formatting theory and was able to make some amendments on this basis, then the positive effects would likely be immediate. Luo Nan's mind was a bit absent-minded at this moment. His thoughts changed as fast as lightning, but it was never a simple process. The undercurrent of subversive concepts churned the sand in his heart. Over 5 years, the hardships and obsession of refining and taking medicine day in and day out drifted and surged at this moment. He inexplicably cut into the silhouette of gear under the setting sun. He also looked across the lake at the empty treehouse. Luo Nan was unable to grasp his own emotions for a time, but he had already made up his mind. He took a deep breath, forgetting about whether or not it was flawed. He took a step back and faced Xiao Xinyu, bowing heavily. I cultivate in formatting theory. It is my grandfather's life's work. I can't give it up no matter what. If the gym master is able to help me mend my flaws and correct my mistakes, I will never forget this favor. Xiao Xinyu seemed to be startled for a moment. Then he shook his head. You are willing to be controlled by the law. You wish to be imprisoned, but you cannot obtain it. Luo Nan just looked at him. Can I? Xiao Xinyu answered normally, I'm not proficient in visualization and the like. I can only practice martial arts and refine energy. I can't deal with the so-called flaws and errors in your formatting theory. At most, I can help you strengthen your body, increase the endurance of your body, and give you the space to adjust and experiment. It's enough. Luo Nan was resolute and decisive. Chapter 285. The mind was born from objects. It died from objects. The mind was in the eyes. Luonan seemed to be asleep yet not asleep. He seemed to be awake yet not awake. It was as if he had entered a meditative state. He really did see the visualization diagram revolving in the void. But at the same time, there were also countless shadows that seemed to be real yet were not. They filled the air inside and outside. Every shadow was similar to his figure. They seemed to be everywhere, yet not a single one was real. Then Luonan's mind sank down, pointing straight at the center of the inscribed sphere. He fell into the deep prison. The shadows were truly like a shadow following the body. They all followed him inside. Thousands of dark chains moved in unison amidst the crashing vibrations. They interweaved like a net, and in the depths of the prison, the lukewarm firelight flickered, illuminating layers upon layers of chaos. It blended and intersected with the myriad of shadows. It was impossible to distinguish them clearly. It was like a flock of bats. The demonic shadows danced, and the waves and clouds were unpredictable. Me? Which is me? In his daze, Luonan's point of view changed. It was as if he was looking down from high above. He saw the light coming up, and the firelight in his eyes merged into one. It radiated great light, suppressing the demonic shadows. He suddenly woke up. He opened his eyes. They were a bit blurry at first because the room was dusky. The sky had yet to brighten. Only the light from the human figurine lamps shone into the hall. Light and shadow interweaved, forming silhouettes above the junk in the room. The ordinary and mediocre images gave him an indescribable feeling of novelty. He didn't know if it was a psychological effect. Luonan flipped over and sat up. The blanket covering his body slid down. The chill of early morning flowed through the open door, making him shrink back. A low and hoarse voice suddenly rang out from the corner of the room. It was Xiao. Empty your vital energy here and see in the dark. The heart is blessed with blessings, but not a single thought arises. It's time for you to do your morning lesson. Do as you did last night. Luonan closed his eyes and opened them once more. This time, the aftershocks from his dream were eliminated, and he truly woke up. He looked at his wristband. It was a bit past 4:30 in the morning. No wonder it was so dark outside. Xiao did not say anything after that. However, Luonan could feel a gaze resting on his body, supervising his homework. Yes, the hard days had begun since last night. Luonan did not say much. After calming his mind, he began to breathe. His mouth and nose gradually became misty. Luonan didn't take it a step further after finding his rhythm. He first massaged his face, especially the acupuncture points around his eye sockets. Then he reached out and crossed his legs. His fingers and palms intersected, and he used a special technique to press. Then he rubbed his feet. His hands had a specific position, but his movements weren't very pleasing to look at. His hands had specific positions, but his movements were not very good. Luonan subconsciously increased the strength of his hand. Soon his hands and feet became warm, and his tendons and meridians became unobstructed. After that, he put his hands behind his back and tried his best to press the area on both sides of his back. This series of movements was like doing exercises, an older version. As he was doing this, Luonan felt a pain on his back. Xiao had used a finger to jab into a point, and Luonan's voice entered his ear once more. Here. You need more strength. Luonan's breathing was chaotic for a moment, but he soon adjusted himself. He followed Xiaoxinyu's request and hooked his hand to touch Xiaoxinyu. He continued to press down until it was sore and hot. Luo but soon. Luo lube done. Luo. Most importantly, no matter which part of the body he moved, his eyes would follow it closely. If there was even the slightest misalignment, Xiaoxinyu would immediately speak up to correct it or even make a move to reverse it. Luonan did this 9 times. Though he didn't seem to leave his original spot, the consumption was enormous. A layer of sweat had already appeared on Luonan's body. It was especially so for his eyes, which had to be moved from time to time. Coupled with the effect of the massage, it was already slightly hot, as if there was steam rising in his eyes. He was on the verge of tears. Luonan closed his eyes slightly and restrained his thoughts. Only now did he conclude his cultivation. This series of movements was something he had just learned last night. Xiaoxinyu had taught him step by step how to massage his head, hands, feet and torso, how to bend and stretch his limbs, and how to supplement his breathing. This included the positions, strength, sensations, reactions and so on. This was the stupid method that Xiaoxinyu spoke of. It was methodical and there was almost no room for the mind to think or visualize, and there was not the slightest bit of falsehood. Xiao Xinyu said, "It is shaped like a bowl, bearing its weight, yet repelling it. A strand of its spirit is imprisoned within, yet its tail is too big to fall off. If you want to correct it, the first thing to do is to open up the layered membrane between the essence, energy, and spirit. Only by starting with the body, cultivating both inside and outside, strengthening the body's functions, cultivating vital energy. It is like adding a fire to the bottom of the bowl, using the body's temperature to melt the tip of the iceberg and obtain a share of the soup. If you want to reach the standard of temperature, you can no longer practice pure tranquility techniques. You need to exert force while walking, sitting, and lying down. You need to circulate your vital energy functions. According to Xiao Xinyu's words, Luo Nan's current cultivation was shackled by external techniques. His fleshly body was weak. He was only connected to the inside and outside of his body through the 9 orifices. The so-called 9 orifices were the eyes, ears, mouth, and nose, and the 2 orifices of the lower body. There was also the saying of the 9 orifices and 3 essentials. The eyes, ears, and mouth were the most important. The eyes were the master. The Yin written charm had a saying, "The mind is born from objects, dies from objects. The key lies in the eyes." Luo Nan's cultivation was on the mental plane. It was difficult to utilize the fleshly body. Right now he needed to utilize the natural physical properties of the body, like drawing water from a canal. He needed to gradually form a scale and seek a breakthrough. Luo Nan only half understood Xiao Xinyu's theory. He just knew that he needed to start with the eye's orifice. Speaking of which, he had yet to form his self-format in his early years. He had only manifested a few small abilities. Aside from the Big Stomach King, which strengthened the digestive and absorption capabilities of his internal organs, his true external manifestation method, the hypnotist, was to use the eyes as a medium to intimidate the mind. Luo Nan had gained a bit from his own experiences. The morning class lasted for nearly an hour, ending at 5:30 a.m. Luo Nan washed his face and rinsed his mouth. When he stepped into the courtyard, he saw Shui Lei sweeping the fallen leaves in the courtyard. Luo Nan went to help, but he was refused. "Save some energy. There won't be a public bus to the school in a bit." "Run there? Isn't it a bit late today?" It was nearly 50 kilometers from the Daoguan to Acumen College. It was not that Luo Nan had never run such a distance before, but it was almost 6 o'clock. He estimated his own abilities and did not believe that he could make it before class started. "Oh my, your ambition is commendable." Shui Lei grinned and gave Luo Nan a thumbs up. But then he shook his head. "I'm the one running there. Your current body isn't suitable for running. You can make do with the public bike spots here at Boshan Building. Oh Nanster, your complexion is quite good today." Luo Nan felt quite good about himself. The soreness of his body had yet to subside, but his mind was focused. His energy flowed smoothly and his mind was clear. He was quite different from yesterday. He had a general idea of what was going on. It had been a month since he achieved the self-format of, "My heart's a prison." He had stopped the usual process of making medicine and taking medicine. He did not have a practical cultivation method. Most of the time he was tired of dealing with the endlessly soaring soul strength. He was in a very passive state. Even if he polished a few techniques, they were scattered and not systematic. Right now, Xiao Xinyu's path was solid. Every segment and every item was a practical step. Even if it was a stupid method, Luo Nan now had a starting point. Luo Nan was not afraid of hard work. He was only afraid that hard work was meaningless. Compared to the big goal of verifying the correctness of formatting theory and justifying his grandfather's name, the small goal that Xiao Xinyu had set for him was truly within reach. Whether it was the goal decomposition or self-consolation, the gloominess in Luo Nan's heart was alleviated by quite a bit. Focus your eyes to see the land illuminated by candlelight. Don't let it go, don't lose it. Chapter 286. Yeah. I can't go to the hospital this morning. Luo Nan rode his bicycle and asked Bai Xinyan for a leave of absence. His breathing was hurried. The cold wind that assaulted his face choked him and he coughed a few times. Bai Xinyan's ears were sharp. She roughly judged Luo Nan's current situation. Morning exercise. Pay attention to the amount of exercise. As for treatment, your current condition is stable. It's fine to miss it once in a while. Alright. How's the sleeping ability going? Luo Nan grunted and grunted in response. He didn't say much. Bai Xinyan didn't ask any more questions and quickly hung up. It looked like she was going to carry out the pleasure therapy to the end with such an attitude. Luo Nan huffed and puffed, forming faint white smoke in the cold morning. Right now it was 7:20 in the morning. He was still one street away from his final destination, Acumen College. But he had been riding for nearly 2 hours, and his stamina was pretty much squeezed out. Xuelei was ahead of him by a body length. Right now Luo Nan felt that his thighs were stiff. His calf muscles were spasming. His chest and back felt as if they had been washed. He couldn't even stand up on the bicycle. Xuelei looked back and slowed down a bit. It could be seen that he still had energy to spare. Luo Nan really envied this animal that seemed to never know exhaustion. Xuelei didn't travel the distance of nearly 50 kilometers in a well-behaved manner. He was like a long-distance runner all the way down. During this time he switched to many different running styles. Many times he punched and kicked. He leaped between floors as he advanced. In terms of movement volume, in terms of consumption, he exceeded Luo Nan by several tens of times. At this moment, even if the two of them slowed down, Xuelei's movement intensity was also correspondingly increasing based on the distance he advanced. Beside him, the sounds of fists and sleeves slicing through the air could be heard. He was simply a training maniac who was harsh on himself and sweating like rain. If Xuelei was like this every day, Luo Nan could more or less understand why Xuelei possessed such astonishing strength that even Zhang Yingying and the other awakened could not stop praising him at such a young age. Speaking of which, Luo Nan had been brought into a rhythm by Xuelei today. He had practically brought out the strength of a race. The cyclist was led around in circles by the runner. It was quite embarrassing just thinking about it. Finally, Xuelei's morning exercise came to an end. He stopped and let out a long breath before switching to a brisk walk. Perhaps it was because he felt Luo Nan's gaze that he turned his face. "Nanster, don't be offended. It's not good to talk when I'm training." Indeed, Xuelei hadn't spoken a single word along the way, which was quite different from his straightforward and talkative personality. "It's nothing. It's pretty good this way." Luo Nan was truly impressed. He was also deeply moved. How can you not put in effort when it comes to practicing martial arts? Xuelei didn't immediately speak. He sized Luo Nan up and down a few times. Then he grinned and said, "The gym master often says that luck is number one in martial cultivation. If you can't grasp your luck, then don't mention anything else." Luo Nan went, He really couldn't think of any connection here. He couldn't help but ask, "What's the theory behind this?" The dojo master once used breathing as an example and talked about it. "Let me tell you about it." Xuelei shook his head and said, "The human body has respiration and metabolism, and so does the world. We are insignificant and short-sighted. We can only see what's in front of us, concentrating on our own breath and breath. The breath of the world needs to be sought in the hazy long river of time. We are unable to see the flow of time. It's very difficult for us to coordinate our breathing with the breathing of the world. But we can be sailors. We can use our bodies as boats. We can use fine operations to ensure that we don't miss the slightest bit of wind direction and water flow within the waves of the long river of time. In the end, we can use the breath of the world to assist the breath of a single person. Whether it's going with the current or against the waves, the speed of a boat is faster than the speed of water. This is the true meaning of cultivation. Within this, wind direction and water flow are luck. Sand can be gathered to form a tower. Wood can be gathered to form a forest. Small forces can be gathered to become great forces. One by one they respond to the body and soul, strengthening the body and transforming the vital energy. Isn't this quite hard to understand? Xuelei was a bit uncertain of Luo Nan's ability to understand as he spoke. Luo Nan grunted. He knew that Xuelei wanted to remind him of a few things. It was probably something about focus and willpower, but Luo Nan was unable to understand the specifics. Xuelei laughed. "I didn't understand at the time either. But then the gym master explained that we are all people who operate boats. It's hard to avoid being surrounded by dangers as we traverse the long river of time. In the olden days, when a fisherman on a river encountered a rapids and dangerous shoals, the boat would be destroyed and the people would die. The exhaustion of strength was secondary. The exhaustion of the mind to observe and utilize the water was the main problem. Practicing martial arts and cultivating may seem like tempering one's strength, but in reality, it tempers the willpower. It tortures the mind. Whether it's ordinary training or facing enemies in battle, the mind comes before the energy, and the energy comes before the strength. And the weight of the exhaustion should be lower. That's the only reasonable thing to do. Luonan looked at Shuelei. This time he finally confirmed it. Wasn't he the type of person that Shuelei spoke of? Wasn't he the type of person who consumed far more physical strength than mental strength? The bodily functions of his entire body were already at their limits, but his mind was still very active. From Shuelei's perspective, was his concentration not enough? Was this a criticism? With Shuelei's temperament, no matter how tactful his words were, this was the limit. For a time, the exhaustion on Luonan's body felt like it was being pricked by needles. Even the breath he breathed out was a bit feverish. Shuelei was a bit worried that he might have gone overboard with his words. He subconsciously waved his hand, but he himself was a bit nervous. Nanster, actually Where should the brain be used in order to be focused, in order to be used in a reasonable manner? Luonan didn't let Shuelei speak nonsense. He asked very seriously. Luonan wouldn't get angry over such a small matter as his friend, but he really didn't understand. Logically speaking, he had been studying and practicing extremely seriously from last night until now. There shouldn't have been any instances of his mind wandering off or slacking off. Shuelei let out a sigh of relief when he saw that Luonan's state of mind was fine. He hurriedly explained, Nanster, you really are working hard, but you're not too familiar with the know-how inside. You're using your functions carelessly. You must know that walking, sitting, and lying down are all part of cultivation. Every movement of your hands and feet requires effort. You need to use your heart. You cultivate the eye's orifice. The eyes are the light of the mind. Wherever the eyes go, the heart goes. Every movement of your hands and feet requires the eyes to take care of them. Luonan looked at his hands and feet and laughed bitterly. But I'm riding a bike. Everything in the multitude returns to their roots. If your hands and feet move, then guard your dantian region. These are just small tricks. The truly difficult part is to look at yourself and others without leaving a single strand behind. Don't give up a single drop. Go from the outside to the inside. Return to your roots. Only then will you know what it means to shine like a candle. Only then will you know what it means to work hard. Only then will you know what true hardship is. Cough. The gym master told me to come here to tell you this. The last sentence was the bottom line. Luonan was stupefied for a moment. His gaze moved away from Shuelei's body. He first looked at his clothes, which were nearly drenched in sweat. Soon he raised his head and looked at the pedestrians coming and going on the street. Most of the pedestrians were students at this hour, but they were of all shapes and colors. Luonan used his mental clairvoyance and roughly calculated that there were around 700 to 800 people on this street. This ability of his was hard to come by even among the awakened. Ordinary people were far inferior to him. But if Luonan were to go deeper and observe the movements of his hands and feet, the changes in his body, not a single strand would be missed. Just looking at 5 or 6 people coming and going around him would cause him to feel mentally and physically exhausted, let alone a street. Of course, there was also himself. If he really wanted to be refined and detailed, wouldn't he have to incorporate all of the changes in the reactions of his flesh, blood, and nerves into his cognitive program? Was this something a human could do? Was this considered cultivation? Chapter 287. Luonan sat on the stone steps. The loose-leaf notebook rested on his knees, positioned at a comfortable angle. Behind him, the classical auditorium only blocked half of the sunlight. The lukewarm sunlight and the chilly shadows laid side by side. He just so happened to be at the boundary of light and shadow. He faced the complex lighting environment with his eyes half squinted. His focus overlapped with the tip of his pen, and he moved his pen along the surface of the paper, revealing neat characters. The breathing metabolism of heaven and earth is the format of heaven and earth. The breathing metabolism of the human body is the format of the self. In order to make the tiny self format display its effect within the hazy heaven and earth format, not only must the power be great, but the power must also be small. I did it too crudely in the past. I did it too clumsily. He raised his head as he wrote to this point. His gaze cut across the stream of people outside the auditorium. The auditorium and the vicinity of the South Bank riverbank were undoubtedly the areas with the most student congregated during society activity time. They spanned many ages, high and low, big and small, beautiful and beautiful men and women. They came and went, forming a dynamic picture. If this were 10 days ago, Luonan's observations would have transformed into a sketch. He would have captured a few people with special characteristics to form the typical characteristics of this place and time. If this were 3 days ago, Luonan would have done his best to distinguish and memorize everyone within his line of sight. Their faces, their movements, their clothing, their relationships with each other, and so on. Right now Luonan was sitting on the steps of the auditorium. He swept his eyes across and selected 10 people from the several hundred people below the steps. These 10 people were in different positions. There were men and women. They were of different ages and different societies. And in the next half-minute, these 10 people passed by Luonan's side in order to ascend the auditorium. Compared to the others, these 10 people were the closest to Luonan. There was practically no difference in the order they passed by. It was only until the last 2 people answered the phone that a situation where the order was reversed appeared. Not bad. 80%. Bystanders couldn't see it, but Luonan understood it clearly. Every time a person passed by 2 meters away, the muscles of his body would tense up and relax. His pores would open and close in response. This was how he was startled. He ensured that he would be able to jump up and react when each person approached him. His potential was hidden and not released, but it consumed quite a bit. A thin layer of sweat covered his body by the time the 10 people passed by. His breathing was a bit ragged. This was how much physical strength was consumed, and the loss of mental strength was even greater. His 80% accuracy rate was not achieved by luck, but by observing the gazes, postures, steps, positions, and distances of hundreds of people, from big to small, from the outside to the inside. This was precisely what Gym Master Shio meant when he said, "With me as the master, look at yourself and look at others." He was not an inanimate object like a camera but a living person. Every time he glanced at someone he had to refer to himself. He had to clarify key information, determine priorities, foresee, prepare, and react accordingly. Therefore, the cultivation of the eye's orifice had never been focused on cultivating the eyes. Instead, the eye's orifice was the forerunner, and it was a systematic project that integrated heart strength, vitality, and the body into one. It was a wondrous cultivation that used a single point to move the whole body. Luonan spent nearly a week to comprehend it. Then he used another 3 days to consolidate it. On the 10th day he could be considered to have crossed the threshold. Thinking back to the cultivation process, it was truly unbearable. This required Luonan to maintain a high level of acuity from beginning to end. He was not allowed to be distracted or absent-minded. In the beginning he was unable to accurately determine the priorities of information. He just felt that his eyes were not meticulous enough. He hated that he could not copy everything in his field of vision. It seemed that if he did not do this, he would not be able to reach the standard of arduous cultivation that Gym Master Shio spoke of. This meant that he was completely focused at every moment, tormenting his mind until his eyesight and brain power were squeezed clean. Now that he thought back to it, Luonan felt that his eyes were sore and swollen. He reflexively wanted to shed tears, or he might as well just close his eyes, lie down, and sleep. This was the greatest joy in the world. When Bai Xinyan saw Luonan in this state, she completely cancelled her Frost River waterway training. According to her, Xiao Xinyu's torture was more effective than any consumption of energy. If Luonan continued to burn like this, Luonan would not be able to last until Dr. Clay, who had repeatedly delayed his trip, arrived at Xia City. Luonan now knew that he had taken a detour, but Gym Master Shio had lightly said that beginners shouldn't be afraid of going overboard. It was possible to want to be neutral, to foresee the extremes, and to measure the increase and decrease. Alright, Luonan would remember to measure the increase and decrease for the rest of his life. Luonan flipped his notebook forward to the flexible e-ink screen. He opened the statistical form and added the results of this training. Then he returned to the diary page and held a pen to write. October 25th. Training with 1,000 people completed. Overall success rate, 72.2%. After dividing into groups, success rate, 55.6%. Final success rate, 19%. After completing the basic data analysis, Luonan closed his notebook. He ignored the strange gazes of the pedestrians around him and took out a bottle of medicine. He poured a drop of eye drops into his eyes and did a facial massage. His eyes were first soaked with coolness, then steam rose in the blink of an eye. The medicinal strength of his fingers seeped in, fusing with his vital energy and moisturizing his eyes. The medicine was a secret recipe provided by Gym Master Shio. It was concocted by Bro Octopus, and it could relieve eye fatigue. But then again, using his eyes too much was a sign of his clumsiness. The human eye was a precise and complex structure. Anatomically speaking, one would not be able to find the existence of the eye's orifice even if they searched through all the positions of the eyes. The so-called eye's orifice was actually the eyes and its corresponding functions. It interfered with the mental plane to form a special structure. It lay between the virtual and the real. Only in this place could one achieve the effect of connecting the inside and the outside, radiating with spiritual light. It was practically impossible for a normal person to possess the eye's orifice. Only by possessing a certain level of cultivation could one realize the interference between the mental and the material plane. Only then would the eye's orifice be gradually constructed. It was the same as the shield of truth. The shield of truth that Luo Nan experienced was considered a temporary structure. But building the eye's orifice was tantamount to building a permanent facility. Luo Nan already had a slight feeling. His eyelids drooped down, but he could feel a heavy pressure acting on them. The pressure came from the format pyramid. It was his power on the mental plane. It was the influence it had on his body on the material plane. Other people cultivated by creating something out of nothing. Only Luo Nan wanted to steal a beam and replace a pillar. He shifted the power that was trapped in the My Heart's a Prison format to a controllable level. After these days of exploration, Luo Nan felt that calling it confinement was not completely correct. It should be said that his soul strength had entered a processing line. It had to complete the process and become a certain finished product before it could be taken off the line. This greatly limited the scope of its usage. It was fine to use chains to bind people, but it was hard to use it for embroidery. If Luo Nan really wanted to transport the raw materials, then he would need to break through the barrier of My Heart's a Prison. First, he would have to consume the materials internally. Could be said that not even 1 out of 100 could be saved, and it had to be done on and off. There was no efficiency to speak of. It was precisely because of this that the results of the soul strength activation exercises in the simulator layer of the psychic wave network were so terrible. But now that he was cultivating in the eye's orifice, the intermittent supply was not unbearable. This kind of work of grinding with water had the material plane constantly bearing and echoing it. Could be said that dripping water wears away a stone. Even if only a single drop was transported out every day, it would leave a mark when it smashed down. It would be like this day in and day out. It would be like a depression that could store water. Like this, it would gradually expand. Plus, Luo Nan was not that miserable yet. The eye's orifice that Luo Nan had just built was like a pool that stored water. Soul strength trickled in. As long as Luo Nan took care of it carefully and prevented it from evaporating or leaking, it could become a pool, a lake, or a sea after a long time. At this point, Luo Nan did not need Gym Master Xiao to mention it again. Luo Nan naturally understood the principle of concealment. He used 70% of his soul strength every day and stored 30%. 70% was used to temper the eye's orifice and build the structure. The remaining 30% was stored within. When Luo Nan closed his eyes, it was like rolling beads spinning in his eye sockets. It seemed cold, but it wasn't cold. It seemed hot, but it wasn't hot. It was warm and cool. It was hard to describe the wondrous feeling. Later on, it seemed as if a ball of light had lit up in his skull. It was hazy at first, like a candle that was about to go out. But if Luo Nan worked hard every day and wiped it, he would make progress. There was another name for this. One heart lantern, a candle illuminating the 9 underworlds. Gym Master Xiao had said that when the heart lantern probed and illuminated the inner organs, Luo Nan would have achieved minor success in the eye's orifice. At this point, the eye's orifice had truly set up a platform. It had an outline. It was no longer a mirage or the ravings of a madman. Luo Nan didn't like to open his eyes because of this, especially when he was alone. He would droop his eyelids and feel the moist, warm and cool feeling of the glimmering candlelight. It was truly a good feeling. He sat there, seemingly in peace yet not awake. His eyes could not see anyone and he did not deliberately use his mental senses. Yet the pedestrians that passed by him all left behind faintly discernible traces on his body. When the heart lantern shone, the traces were revealed. Sometimes Luo Nan felt that he was like a spider. He used this marvelous method to weave an incorporeal web. The multitude of living beings, as long as they passed through, would give him a stir, and he would respond accordingly. In comparison, clairvoyance on the mental plane had a greater range and a deeper level, but it definitely did not have such a direct and pure reaction mechanism. Luo Nan's shoulders suddenly slumped, but he was a step too late. Shui Lei pressed down on him from behind, and the feeling of a spider weaving a web instantly shattered. The bug was too big. Did you use mental senses? No. Luo Nan's reaction failed. He was a bit depressed, but he still narrowed his eyes and responded with a single word in a bad mood. Then you can see me coming from behind? The heart lantern of the eye's orifice illuminates oneself and others. It's only been a few days. Beginners need to smelt their thoughts, open their flesh and bones, and build their foundation in 100 days. I used 2 months back in the day. Even Shuelei was a bit envious when he saw Luo Nan's progress. I haven't succeeded yet, and I have a foundation. The gym master said it earlier. Even if your foundation is deep, you are mostly affected by external techniques. Your body is weak. It's easy to understand, but it's harder to achieve than a normal person. Today is the 25th. You can see signs within 10 days. You're a genius. It's not that exaggerated. I can still borrow a bit of strength. Luo Nan had a self-knowledge that was hard for bystanders to understand. Speaking of which, it was quite a coincidence. An electric chain suddenly cut through his mind at this very moment. It flashed and disappeared, but it stirred up his thoughts. The heart lantern flickered, losing its stability and harmony, and its radiance grew brighter and brighter. He furrowed his brows. It leaked again. The land of the lake overflowed a bit. His small pond couldn't contain it. Before he could finish his thoughts, someone shouted from below the stairs, "Nanster Leister, it's time." There was no need to look to know that Xie Junping had come to pick them up. Luo Nan temporarily dispersed his mind. He stood up and walked down the stairs shoulder to shoulder with Shuelei. They entered the car. Chapter 288. The sightseeing bus sped through the campus. Most of the students of Acumen College were still brainstorming for the club activities. They were trembling with fear for the 8 credits a year. The people on the bus were truly hateful. Unfortunately, no one on the bus had this awareness. In a certain sense, they were a group of people isolated from the real campus. Shuelei sat in the front seat and chatted with Xie Junping about the party. He was a bit curious and nervous after entering a completely unfamiliar circle. Xie Junping was laughing and joking with him. He spoke half-truths and half-lies, playing around with him. Luo Nan sat in the back. At first, he listened to Xie Junping and Shuelei chat, but then his mind sunk into the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. He clairvoyantly observed the flickering flames and the changes in the surrounding environment, not missing a hair. The heart lantern of the eye's orifice lit up, illuminating a region of his brain. The results of this cultivation were quite mysterious, but it wasn't the first guest in Luo Nan's brain. There was another object revolving around the heart lantern right now. The external neuron. This dynamo core was like a dragon that floated in his brain. It moved around the lantern, appearing and disappearing from time to time. When it got closer, the electricity overflowed, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. It intersected with the flames of the heart lantern, swallowing and spitting. It seemed as if it could be swallowed at any time. It made one's heart tremble with fear. This sort of situation had existed not long after the heart lantern was lit. And it absolutely didn't just look scary. This was the first time this thing came close. The energies of both sides reacted, and the electricity radiating from the external neuron directly extinguished the heart lantern. Luo Nan's many days of hard work were destroyed in an instant. Similar situations occurred 7 times in a row, tormenting Luo Nan until he began to doubt his life. In the 8th round, when he was close to despair, the electricity directly entered the heart lantern. It strongly fueled the ignition, illuminating everything with light. The amount of growth this time was 10 times more than the sum of his hard-earned savings. Over the next few days, the external neuron would come every time he finished cultivating in the eye's orifice. It would bombard the heart lantern with electricity. Luo Nan's goal of 1,000 people per day was to form groups of 100 people. He cultivated in 10 groups every day, and this lightning dragon would appear 10 times. Though it was never extinguished, sometimes the tyrannical electricity would greatly dampen the brightness and harmony of the heart lantern. If Luo Nan hadn't strengthened it a few times in between, Luo Nan's progress would have been unsightly. It was for this reason that Luo Nan admired Shuelei. Luo Nan felt rather complex feelings towards Shuelei. Don't look at his current progress as being delightful. In fact, it's all over again and again. Should I look at it after cultivating tomorrow? Perhaps it would completely collapse. Luo Nan had been in the Daoguan for a few days. He had long since understood the heart lantern. The first few times the heart lamp was extinguished, it was fortunate that his cultivation was shallow and the backlash was not strong. It only took him 2 more days of effort. But now, if the heart lamp were to be extinguished once more, the damaged structure of his eyes and his mind and willpower would have to be restored. He would have to think about it for a year and a half. It was as if there was a bomb hidden in his brain that could explode at any time, and he was the one who put it in his brain. Luodong School. Was Luoyang Academy, Qin and Star. He said. Lu. He thought for a moment, then added the word electricity after the word fire, followed by the word ice before he finally gave up. After writing these words, he unconsciously sighed. It wasn't a good analogy to call a bomb. It would be more appropriate to call it an iceberg. They were all hidden beneath the surface of the water, waiting for people to crash into them. After cultivating in the eye's orifice for a few days, Luonan felt that his greatest harvest was that he now understood the standard of precision needed for true cultivation. He also used this precision to re-examine the process of practicing formatting theory. He wanted to know if he had made any mistakes. Of course the answer was yes. Whether or not formatting theory had its own flaws, he would not discuss it for the time being. In his cultivation of formatting theory, there were too many things that he knew but did not know why. He relied on his grandfather's theory to walk down this path. Many small details were determined by his own laws. This was why Xiao Xinyu had labeled him an external law, and had trapped him in a cage. The current situation faced by the heart lantern of the eye's orifice was the death Luonan brought upon himself. The use of the external neuron's void depository function originated from Elder Mo Luan of the Blood Flame Order. At the time, Luonan's soul strength was growing explosively. The imbalance between his body and soul intensified, and he did not know how to deal with it. It just so happened that the Wraith sign had occupied the magpie's nest and was lurking by Mo Luan's side. Luonan used the Wraith sign as his eyes and ears. He referred to Mo Luan's methods against the Soul Envoy and took the initiative to pull apart the distance between his body and soul. His soul and body seemed to be joined, but they weren't. This reduced the pressure on his fleshly body. This method was indeed effective, but there were many repercussions. It caused Luonan to be sensitive and have many dreams. His mind was absent-minded. Later, Luonan discovered that the external neuron had the void depository function. When his soul was entrusted to it, it was like entering an empty world. There were no distracting psychic waves. Later, the Wraith sign hunted and created a disturbance. He relied on the external neuron to cushion the pressure, saving his life. Since then, Luonan had always entrusted his soul to the external neuron to reduce the pressure. He gradually grew accustomed to it. So it was more accurate to say that Luonan's body and soul had been lacking a fusion for a very long time. Most of his soul was entrusted to the external neuron. Even though this strange object was hidden in his brain, it was not an organ of his flesh and blood. There was still a layer separating the two. Xiao Xinyu said that the fleshly body was rejected by the external technique. When combined with reality, it was actually a barrier and conflict between the external neuron, which was the carrier of the soul, and the naturally existing fleshly body. This was the crux of the problem. At the very least, this was the case in the realm of understanding. This was where the matter came to a dead end. Luonan could control the external neuron, causing it to move to various parts of his brain. He could even drive it out. However, his frail fleshly body was far from being able to bear the heavy pressure of his soul body. He could not do without the void depository function. Moreover, in the end he would need to transfer soul strength from the My Heart's a Prison format to refine it. The connection between the eye's orifice and it was inevitable. Especially after every refinement of the orifice, the eye's orifice would become nimble and harmonious, linking his body and soul. It was like the positive and negative charges in a rain cloud attracting each other. The situation of lightning bombarding the heart lantern was inevitable. This meant that every time Luonan practiced, he would have to face the dangerous test of entering a state of mental derangement. He failed the first 7 times, but he persevered through the next few dozen times. He even obtained some benefits. It looked like this business was feasible. However, the matter of cultivation required meticulous concentration. What they feared the most were ups and downs. Even if this kind of benefit was multiplied by 10 times, it would not be able to withstand the destructive blow brought by a moment of crisis. The problem is fatal, and having no one to help is even more fatal. Luonan did not open his eyes. He just used his fingertips to streak across the pages of the notebook, flipping them back and forth. The external neuron was a core, a secret that could easily be stripped away. He would not tell anyone about its existence. This led him to rely on himself. He pondered over his plans bit by bit. It had been 6 days since the first time the heart lantern was lit. He had dealt with 60 strikes of lightning. In the beginning, Luonan could not think of anything else. He could only do his utmost to strengthen the structure of the eye's orifice. He would rather greatly slow down his progress in order to stabilize the foundation of the heart lantern. He even referred to the configuration of Fairchild's shield of truth. He borrowed the half-formed eye's orifice, the fusion of body and soul. He spent a great deal of effort to fine-tune the microscopic structure of the eyes. It was for no other purpose than to seek stability. Though this method was stupid, the results were decent. Especially after repeated experiences a few dozen times, it was like the forging method of tempered steel in ancient times. Luonan forged and hammered again and again, causing the structure of the eye's orifice to become tough and solid. The ignited heart lantern emitted a mellow and pure intent. Only in this way was he able to block 53 strikes of lightning in a row and remain undefeated. However, Luonan still had a deep worry in his heart. This worry grew heavier and heavier as he pondered deeper and deeper into the phenomenon of the heart lantern being electrocuted. "Nanster, what are you thinking about?" Xie Juanping's deliberately raised voice finally entered Luonan's ears. Luonan was a bit startled. He half opened his eyes and looked forward. "What's wrong?" Shui Lei's complaint rang out at the same time. "Don't disturb him. Maybe he's cultivating." Xie Juanping laughed. "The car is swaying back and forth. What kind of cultivation is he cultivating? Aren't you afraid of running amok?" Luonan was left speechless after being stabbed in the face. Xie Juanping didn't look at the road. He turned his head and laughed. "People train in martial arts. The more they train, the more spirited they become. For example, Leicester. But look at you. You've been drooping your eyes these past few days. It's like you haven't woken up yet. If you train like this, which pretty girl would pay attention to you?" Luonan leaned back, doing his best to relax his body. His eyes remained squinted. "Yesterday you said that you were going to meet some friends. It would be more convenient to deal with the matter of gear." Of course I said that." Xie Juanping put on an innocent face. "But didn't I tell you? Vice President Tang Yi of the Mystic Arts Research Society has the highest chance of ascending. Her nickname is Blood Peony. She's a standard beauty complex. You can't even get close to her unless you're a handsome guy over 80 points. Even if you do get close, most of them will be trampled into the dirt. Right now you're relying on your Shota face. You're barely able to muddle along with being delicate and cute. If you don't pull yourself together, your future will be unpredictable." Luonan let out a long sigh. He simply closed his eyes completely. He was too lazy to say anything more. But at this time the heart lantern burned in his brain. The flames burned brightly, but it lost its harmony. Clearly, the 60th electric shock had stuffed the heart lantern too full. Restoring the heart lantern to the eye's orifice would certainly form pressure on the incomplete structure. This was a situation that needed to be dealt with first. Luonan was used to this. He didn't open his eyes. His fingertips fumbled with the notebook, flipping it to the back. He found a flat piece of soft paper sandwiched between the pages. The paper was thin and a bit rough, but it was valuable. This was a paper talisman that Mr. Gao had personally made. It was quite extravagant for Luonan to use it for practice. He stroked the paper in his hand, recalling the techniques that Papercut had taught him. His fingertips moved and he folded the paper talisman in a simple manner. He held it in his palm. His eyes could not see, but the heart lantern was focused. In his brain, the flames suddenly flared and then extinguished. In this instant, Luonan's hand that held the paper talisman felt as if it had been burned by an incorporeal flame. A burning pain pierced through him. His 5 fingers instinctively opened, and it seemed as if some ash impurities were leaking out from between his fingers. Then there was a very real feeling of impact. Luonan's 5 fingers closed once more. Only then did he open his eyes to look. There was no paper talisman at this time. All he saw was a paper man with all 4 limbs. It had a muddle-looking face and it was about the size of a palm. It had collided with the inner edge of Luonan's thumb, and then it went limp. The open car frame sent a cool breeze over, and the paper man's hands and feet shook. There was no other reaction besides this. Chapter 289. My luck is pretty good. Luonan's gaze swept over the paper man's body a few times. He flipped the notebook to a blank page and placed the paper man inside. There were already 3 similar interlayers as he flipped through the pages. There were a total of 4 paper men hidden in the notebook, including this one. Some were bigger, some were smaller, but the material was the same. These paper men were created by Luo Nan when his eyes' orifices were overflowing and the pressure was overloaded. They were created to shift the pressure. There were 60 lightning strikes. Aside from the first 7 times the heart lantern was extinguished, there were also the broken and basically balanced rounds. There were a total of 25 times when the pressure had to be shifted. However, only 4 succeeded in the end. The success rate was only 16%. It was pitifully low. Even so, he had to record it down. Luo Nan opened the flexible e-ink screen and recorded the data. Basically, he treated the paper men as this week's homework. He was going to give them to Papercut to look over later. He felt that these paper men were quite different from the works he made when he first started learning. At the very least, the way they were cut was quite cool. Luo Nan put away his pen and blew away the ashes stuck between his fingers. He blinked his eyes, but he felt his eyes become a bit dry. He closed his eyes and looked within himself. He saw that the glow of the heart lantern was quite weak. It was even weaker than it was before he received the blessing. Luo Nan was not surprised. He was still a novice when it came to soul strength activation. He was far from being precise. He had clearly used too much strength this time. The consumption was too great. He wasn't in a hurry to recover because he would need to transport his soul strength out of the My Heart's a Prison format if he did so. The external neuron might give him a fierce blow. It really wasn't worth it. He allowed the vitality of his body to naturally nourish and recover. Although it took a long time, it was stable. It could be said that he had a degree of relaxation. In the front seat of the sightseeing bus, Xie Junping spoke of the blood peony. He spoke of gear. He was still in high spirits. A woman as powerful as Tang Yi needs someone even more powerful to conquer her. Otherwise, she needs to do what she likes. Master, you really don't lose out. You can tell that she's a great beauty just by looking at her nickname. Today is the 25th. The 30th is Monday's gear auction. Time is tight and the task is heavy. I can't drag this out any longer. Luo Nan raised his leg and kicked the front seat, giving Xie Junping a warning. Then he changed the topic to a normal direction. Do you have any idea of the base price for both sides? There is no definite news at the moment, only rumors. Xie Junping shrugged his shoulders. Sissy Du's face is covered in dirt and he's been kicked out of his house. His connections in the society have been cut off by quite a bit. He only mentioned it briefly, saying that the backer behind the Mystic Arts Research Society wants to cooperate with the Construction Society. Cooperation? That's impossible, right? Luo Nan was quite surprised. Wasn't the Order of Justice behind the Mystic Arts Research Institute? Behind the Construction Society was the Rainbow Fund, which was equivalent to Quantum Corporation. What was the point of putting these two families together? Isn't capital something that can change at will? However, it was rumored that the main reason was because the Mystic Arts Research Society had changed their financial backer. It used to be a religious group, but now it had changed to a research fund. It was quite famous. In our circle, LCRF. Life Cycle Research Fund. Hey, you've heard of it? Xie Junping was very surprised and turned to look at him. I thought you didn't care about these things. I just heard about it. In the next 2 days. Luo Nan spent most of his energy on the heart lantern of the eye's orifice over the past 10 days, but the training courses arranged for him by the society were still ongoing. Aside from Crag Burst and Red Fox's practical courses, several courses had to be adjusted back due to interference power. Luo Nan also persisted in studying the related theories of the Soul Strength Activation Techniques course. He would occasionally do experiments to adjust. Otherwise, the small paper man in his notebook would not exist. Luo Nan's reaction to the information about the Life Cycle Research Fund was lightning fast. This was because the fund was mentioned in He Yuan's world order inside and outside the Psychic Wave Network and Bamboo Pole's notes on major characters of the world. On the surface, it was funded and established by a few top tycoons. Its main investment direction was the classical direction of human life extension. It was an important investment fund in the field of biology, and it was a large financial backer of many important biological laboratories. However, the fund had close ties with the political and military circles of the inner world. It was practically an open secret. The fund also cooperated with various powers of the inner world. Many important projects were listed there, including the Frost River Waterway, which Luo Nan was very familiar with. Strange. Luo Nan raised his head and leaned against the back of his chair. He stared blankly at the sky. The Life Fund, Quantum Corporation, and the previous order are all interested in gear. What? He asked himself this question, not expecting to receive an answer. He never expected that Xie Junping would immediately follow up. Sissy Du said that Gear's architectural structure is very suitable for carrying out mysterious rituals. In the past, the Order Club was also known as the Ritual Society by people in the circle. Acumen College's fraternity and sorority societies have held initiation ceremonies here several times. They even had drug parties and the like. It's said that the effects here are much stronger than outside. Xie Junping had been speaking casually, but he turned his head and saw Luonan frown. He hurriedly stopped talking. But after a long while he couldn't help but say, "It's me. I also think it's a bit interesting. It's especially comfortable over there. My brain works fast and my eyes and ears are sharp. Also, sometimes I can see things even without opening my eyes. Transparent. Master, tell me, am I going to rush towards superpowers?" Luonan was speechless. He didn't know how to respond. Xie Junping's interest was piqued. "I didn't realize it before, but I've been interacting with Sissy Du these past few days. He's really an interesting fellow. His stomach is filled with goods, and the fields he's come into contact with are very diverse and very interesting. Alright, are you two free on Sunday?" Sissy Du said that there's some Starry Sky Club that holds a mystic arts salon every Sunday. There are many people with abilities inside. It's very interesting. How about we go take a look? I don't understand anything about the mystic arts." Shuelei responded awkwardly. His horizons had been greatly broadened during this time. His understanding of the inner world grew deeper and deeper. He was already pondering about joining the Wilderness Explorers Society. How could he possibly go to that completely unreliable so-called mystic arts salon? "Master, I've already contacted them on Sunday. I'm going to send them over for repair." Luonan also declined the invitation. And this was the truth. He really was going to the repair center. Xie Junping was a bit disappointed. "Then forget it. I wanted you guys to help me take a look. I was just saying." Shuelei turned to look at Luonan. His eyes probably said, "This bro doesn't know anything?" Luonan shook his head slightly. Xie Junping certainly knew that Luonan possessed a certain superpower. Xie Junping was quite reverent towards this, and he was also a bit curious. Luonan didn't take the initiative to talk about it. After all, there were differences in their circles. It was hard to understand without personal experience. It would only cause confusion in one's heart. But thinking deeper, Xie Junping had a place in the format pyramid. Xie Junping was a believer even if he was a level 1 apprentice, and the strict rules of the format pyramid could still affect him. Luonan thought about his own hardships and felt that he really needed to carefully examine Xie Junping when he had the time. This was to prevent this friend of his from receiving any negative impacts. Now wasn't the best time to discuss this sort of thing. Luonan's thoughts spun and he thought of something else. He said to Shuelei, "Did you bring that thing over?" The topic changed too quickly. Shuelei didn't react for a time. "What?" "The mechanical device inside the Tai Chi ball. It needs to be repaired." Luonan was speechless towards Shuelei. "I told you 2 days ago. Bamboo Pole introduced me to a very powerful mechanic. I brought it over. I brought it over." Shuelei patted his head and reached his hand into his pocket. He felt empty and this big guy could only laugh awkwardly. "I stuffed it into the locker this morning. I forgot to take it out. Should I go get it now?" "Forget it. You can give it to me tomorrow morning." Though Xie Junping didn't understand what the two were talking about, he looked all around and said, "Is the main locker room in the South 2 district?" "We're in the South 1 district. It's not that far. There's no harm in going over. Let's change hands early so that we don't forget tomorrow. Your memory has been like that for the past few days." "That's fine." Luonan and Shuelei both agreed. But after a brief pause, Luonan found Xie Junping's words strange. "What's wrong with my memory?" Xie Junping made a U-turn as he chuckled. "I told you a long time ago that Jim Archbishop Xiu's disciple has amazing abilities. Bring me to pay my respects and learn some kung fu." Neither of you remember. The two who had been rebuked glanced at each other. They were both a bit embarrassed. Actually, it wasn't that their memories were bad. It was just that after Shuelei mentioned it, Xiu Xinyu had rejected him with a single word. There was no room for discussion. Xiu Xinyu's straightforward attitude made Luonan feel a bit overwhelmed by the favor. That's right. This was the feeling. Why did Gym Master Xiu agree to teach him kung fu so easily back then? The sightseeing bus stopped outside the main locker room amidst the stuttering responses of the two ability users. Lei hurriedly got off the bus to retrieve the item. Luo Nan and Xie Junping chatted here and there, but the topic of gear never strayed away. Halfway there, Luo Nan subconsciously turned on his flexible e-ink screen. He used his status as a member of the society to pull out the architectural blueprints and other information from the internet. He looked at the intertwining gears of different sizes. It was both creative and had a strict and unique aesthetic. In the end, Luo Nan cared quite a bit. If it was just the Rainbow Fund, Luo Nan could more or less understand. After all, Yan Yongbo was the leader. Yan Yongbo certainly wanted to seize back the laboratory and clear the name of his deceitful father. However, whether it was the Life Cycle Research Fund or the Order of Justice, they all more or less paid attention to gear. Was it just because of the mysterious ritual? Looking back, what was his mother's goal in designing and building gear? Was it just like the information said? Was it her graduation work, a pure architectural art? Was it that simple? Luo Nan looked at the image of a refreshing woman on the information file, and his mind was in a trance. He stared blankly until Xie Junping snapped his fingers in a flirtatious manner and called out, "Beauty, a chance encounter is better than a chance encounter. Want to hitch a ride?" Luo Nan raised his head and saw a figure walk out from the main locker room. It wasn't Lei. It was just as Xie Junping said. It was a beauty above average. Chapter 290. Hearing Xie Junping's roguish voice, the woman who just walked out of the hall raised her head. Her gaze was quite calm and she even revealed a slight smile. "Hello, Head Xie." This simple greeting turned Xie Junping's attempt to strike up a conversation into nothingness. Luo Nan finally confirmed this person's identity. "Senior Sister Tian?" The woman turned to look at him and her face revealed astonishment. "Junior Nan? Are you feeling better?" This calm woman was none other than Tianxi. Half a month ago, Luo Nan and the others had come to Frost River Reality because of her and Imo Chio, the third brother of the Imo family's get-together. Luo Nan caused such a huge commotion. Luo Nan didn't blame her. He just felt a bit emotional. Imo Chio and Tianxi seemed to see eye to eye at the time, but there was no news of them afterwards. Tianxi brought her displeased cousin to visit Luo Nan during the few days he was hospitalized. She didn't lack etiquette and it gave people a good impression of her. From the perspective of a relative of the Imo family, it was quite a pity. Today, Tianxi wore a slim turtleneck sweater paired with a velvet skirt. It set off her small face the size of a palm, and it made her petite figure appear longer. She looked all the more refined and gentle. It was no wonder that Xie Junping took liberties with her upon seeing her. Speaking of which, the two of them were both members of the student organization. Their relationship with each other far surpassed Luo Nan's. "You're also a department head and I'm also a department head. We're a perfect match." Xie Junping still had a mischievous smile on his face. He jumped out of the car and gestured with his hand. He acted like an experienced driver. "I've been wanting to lead Minister Tian's horse for a long time. Give me a chance today. Don't refuse. I know where you're going. Cloud City Water Village, right? With Minister Tian at the party, the attraction is complete. Don't you think so, Nanster?" Luo Nan also jumped out of the car and glared at him. Xie Junping was still a bit afraid of him. His neck instinctively shrunk back. Tianxi smiled faintly. "I'm just going to make up the numbers. Don't overestimate me, Master Xie." "All right, Junior Nan, I heard from Tianxi that quite a few people have mentioned you in the past few days. Your name is getting bigger and bigger." She was all smiles from beginning to end. It was as if she was chatting about family matters, but the meaning behind it was a bit subtle. Luo Nan and Xie Junping were both stupefied. Lei just so happened to rush out at this time. He saw the three chatting and his footsteps slowed down. On the night of Frost River Reality, Tianxi and Lei did not meet face to face. However, when she saw this situation she knew that they were together. She immediately took half a step back. "Young Master Xie, junior brother Luo, you two go first. I already have a date. I'm going with someone." "No way." Xie Junping was truly immersed in his role. He even forgot Luo Nan's silent warning. His face was like a bolt from the blue. "You have an appointment? As a female companion?" Tianxi thought for a moment, then pursed her lips and smiled. Yes, a female companion. No matter how unwilling Xie Junping was, he didn't want to continue pestering her. He could only sigh and bid farewell before driving the sightseeing bus away. When he turned the corner he glanced back and chuckled. This person is really powerful. Luo Nan grunted. There was a mature and mellow soul within Tianxi's petite body. Xie Junping's eyes weren't bad. But this fellow couldn't keep up his airs. He sighed in the blink of an eye. Chen Weiqin hasn't been able to get his hands on her after so many years at school. I don't know who's the lucky one this time. Luo Nan gave the driver's seat a light kick. Drive properly. Shui Lei snorted. Chen Weiqin. The cause of his relationship with Qin Xiaolin being ruined was his attitude toward Chen Weiqin back at the Limestone Water Village pub. Naturally, he didn't have any good feelings toward the vice president of the student council. Especially 10 minutes later, when the bus drove past the Limestone Water Village pub, Shui Lei returned to his old place and his mood became even worse. Luckily the location of the party wasn't set there. Cloud City Water Village had plenty of places to arrange similar group activities. In the Pingjiang district, where the height of the buildings was relatively low, Cloud City Water Village, this super large compound building complex, was undoubtedly the most outstanding and the most eye-catching one. The main body of the compound complex was still around 15 kilometers away from Acumen College, but the derivative building area already bordered the campus. With its prosperity, it attracted tens of thousands of students and teachers. They spent their time there lingering on and forgetting to return. This was the origin of the name Acumen College's large living area. In fact, Cloud City Water Village used the same method to realize the connection with two other famous high schools in the district. And within its enormous structure was Xia City's top business college and private high school. The participants of this party came from the 5 schools covered by Cloud City Water Village. A total of 500 people were gathered. It was already a medium to large-scale party and it was quite formal. Before arriving at the venue, Luo Nan and the others had to follow the requirements of the party and change their clothes. This is quite troublesome. Also, what the hell is this? Luo Nan shook his white coat, which was clearly a size too big, in the luxurious suite reserved by Tyrant Xie. He had a baffled expression. It's work clothes. If you want to pretend to be a doctor, then pretend to be a doctor. If you want to pretend to be a Frankenstein, then pretend to be a Frankenstein. Oh, I even prepared sterile gloves. Do you want to wear them? Xie Junping waved the gloves in front of Luo Nan's eyes. He was grinning from ear to ear. Luo Nan slapped the gloves away in a bad mood and asked, "What kind of party is this? Why is it so fancy?" I sent you the electronic invitation. Didn't you see it?" Luo Nan was speechless. He had been pouring his heart and soul into cultivating in the eye's orifice during this period of time. The little spare time he had was packed to the brim by the society's training. He didn't have the mental energy to care about anything else. The matter of the party was completely arranged by Xie Junping. Right now, the electronic invitation was still in an unread state in his inbox. Xie Junping chuckled. Then do it at the last minute. It's written very clearly on it. If you don't read it, don't blame me if you make a fool of yourself later. Luo Nan rolled his eyes and immediately opened the invitation from his wristband. Sure enough, the introduction was very clear. This party was of the role-playing type. Every participant had to prepare attire for a profession in society. It would be best if the attire was related to their profession and specialty. There were thousands of professions in society, but there were far fewer who had the corresponding attire with distinct characteristics. There would certainly be repetitions. The theme of today's party was called Mutual Appreciation. The invitation said that there would be interactions between people of the same profession who were role-playing. The wording was mysterious and not too serious. Luo Nan scratched his head when he saw this. He had been a nerd for many years. He was most afraid of this sort of bustle. He felt uncomfortable no matter what. Also, what kind of vile hobby did Xie Junping have? Why did he make him look like a doctor or a Frankenstein? He laughed and said, "It's a good thing I read it early. I don't need to make any special preparations." The angle he was role-playing today was that of a martial artist. It was his true self. He wore the Taoist uniform of Divine Yu Gym every day. His appearance didn't change at all. It was said that this was to advertise the Taoist gym. Being old for so long had become a habit. Even though the Taoist gym no longer recruited students, he didn't change his clothes. He was the most worry-free one. As for Xie Junping, he was the most normal. He wore formal attire, and he had added a layer of sequins to it. It was quite eye-catching. Luo Nan was both amazed and dissatisfied. "Why are you wearing formal attire?" "I'm also a character. What do you think? My true nature is to be dissolute, rich and carefree." Xie Junping laughed and pushed Luonan and Shuelei out. They headed to the venue together. Luonan shook his white coat. He felt awkward no matter how he looked at it, but a certain someone was waving gloves in front of his eyes. Dr. Luo, you really don't need it? Call me Dr. Luo. Luonan replied hatefully. Then he snatched the gloves from Xie Junping and stuffed them into his pocket. He couldn't help but laugh to himself. It had been a long time since he had felt this relaxed. They were currently in the Ocean Sky Cloud City building. This was the fourth of the 6 buildings in Cloud City Water Village that were distributed in a circular staircase fashion. The first 3 buildings had the name of Water Village. Starting from this building, the 2 words Cloud City were hung in the building's name. The building's height rose correspondingly. Of course, the prices of the various services were the same. Shuelei grimaced at the exquisite and luxurious furnishings along the way as he walked on the road to the party venue. A cold and gorgeous deep blue light assaulted his face the instant he stepped into the main venue. He exclaimed in surprise, "Good heavens! My goodness, this is the Crystal Palace?" The first impression that the main venue gave people was that of rippling waves. The enormous amount of seawater was sealed by a transparent crystal wall. Under the illumination of the lights, it presented the near-perfect texture of the ocean as one would expect. Actually, this scene could be seen in any modern marine park or underwater world. It wasn't strange at all. But one just had to think about it. This was the interior of an 800-meter-tall skyscraper. The seawater flowed from top to bottom through the entire structure. It was stored in the walls and flowed within the pillars. Tens of millions of tons of seawater were displayed in such a regular and willful manner. Of course, there were millions of sea creatures, from tiny scallops to enormous blue whales. They collectively constructed a complete and twisted chain of life. Right now, the participants of the party were all distributed on the circular viewing platform built around the central ocean scenic area. Several hundred people were quite a lot. But compared to the 120-meter diameter crystal pillar, which was as tall as the building itself, it really wasn't much. This world-breaking water tank was erected, filled with seawater, and maintained the highest level of safety protection. This achievement could be called a monumental monument in the field of applied physics. Cloud City Water Village's building complex was completely formed 4 years ago. Ocean Sky Cloud City was the last to be built. It was built about a year later than the main building. It could be seen just how difficult the construction was. Luonan had come here twice with his aunt's family. It wasn't his first time seeing it, so he felt a bit weaker. But he never got tired of looking at the beautiful sea creatures inside. The 3 of them didn't speak for a while until someone called out to them. "Brother Ping, you guys came pretty late." Hu Huaying, who was in charge of the advance party, had arrived long ago. She popped out of nowhere. Today's party was a get-together initiated by the student unions of 5 schools. Each school only had 100 spots. It was a fairly high-end gathering. Chapter 291. Compared to Xie Junping, who had no sincerity in acting, Hu Huaying at least had a bit of performance. He wore Western cowboy attire with a crooked cowboy hat. Upon closer inspection, the hat was actually made of paper. It was funny and casual. Seeing Luonan and the others focus their gazes on his head, Hu Huaying shook his head rather proudly. "I'm okay, right?" Luonan's hatred had yet to dissipate. He sneered, "Much better than a certain cowherd." It was easy to tell who the cowherd was just by looking at their outfits. Xie Junping opened his mouth but was unable to speak. He could only shrug. Hu Huaying stifled her laughter. She slightly lifted the brim of her hat and bowed in thanks. The appointed cowherd said unhappily, "Don't talk nonsense." "Are you sure?" Hu Huaying answered, "The blood peony will definitely participate." "What occupation? What about attire?" "Who knows? Just look at her height. She's a 185-centimeter beauty. Wouldn't she stand out like a crane in a flock of chickens?" The 2 members of the student council discussed the details. Shuelei turned to ask the more trustworthy person, "Nanster?" Luonan shook his head slightly. His face faced the central crystal pillar. He was a bit lost in thought. Luonan was an expert among experts when it came to finding people. He slightly released his mental senses and swept across the 3 levels of the platform. However, he didn't find the person described by Hu Huaying. Instead, there was a clear feeling of obstruction when his soul strength cut through the crystal pillar. He changed frequency 6 or 7 times in a row before finding the right method to send the psychic waves into the sealed seawater. Aside from this, there were no abnormalities. Luonan first cursed himself for being stupid. It was impossible for the blood peony to be hidden in the seawater. Why did he do such a meaningless thing? But his thoughts moved again and he suddenly realized something. This crystal wall could actually isolate a considerable portion of the psychic wave transmission. The material? No, there were traces of mutual interference between the mental and material planes. It was more like a blessing. A blessing? Luonan raised his head and looked up. He couldn't see the top of the crystal pillar. He looked down and couldn't see the bottom either. A blessing with this volume? His chain of logic collapsed just like that. Xie Junping mumbled to the side, "It shouldn't be here yet. Then let's wait a bit longer. And we can't make it too obvious. We have to be a bit more natural. That person isn't easy to deal with." Hu Huaying also said, "It's strange. Tang Yi will graduate next year. She doesn't seem to be preparing to continue her studies. What can he do by taking over the president's position? No one can guess that person's thoughts. If you could guess it, why would you need to come looking for me?" Tidying up his sequined suit, Xie Junping sighed, "If we can't find him, then let's not look for him. It might not be reasonable to deal with him directly. Let's use a roundabout way to save the country. Let's go find the master first and use him as a middleman." Shuelei didn't understand. What's the host of the 5 schools fellowship? Somebody has to provide the space. In Ocean Sky Cloud City, the Yao family is a major shareholder. Their family's 4th young master, Yao Feng, is in Cloud City's business school. Today he booked the entire 3rd level of the platform. Xie Junping explained a few words, then grinned and said, "The Yao family used to be on the road and they also traveled by sea. Their hands are quite unscrupulous, but Yao Feng is a good person. What's even better is that his family seems to be related to Tang Yi." "You have a stake in it, right?" Hu Huaying corrected. There's even a rumor that he's a mistress of his grandfather. Anyway, he has a bit of a friendship with him." Xie Junping's voice lowered a bit. It was more or less taboo. He immediately shifted his gaze to a different angle. "I say that the key lies with Leicester this time." Shuelei blinked his eyes and pointed at his own nose. "Meh. That's you." Xie Junping reached out and wrapped his arm around Shuelei's thick shoulders. He gave Shuelei face to face and said, "Yao Feng is a very fanatical fighter. Of course he has high standards but low ability. But when we talk about some professional stuff, the results will certainly be quite good." Hu Huaying added, "Tang Yi is a fighter herself. Many people say this." Xie Junping made the decision. "So today we'll start with martial arts. Leicester, we're relying on you." "This is fine. How about we stop talking about it?" Shuelei was far more cheerful than Luonan, but the two brothers were more or less the same when it came to dealing with people. Shuelei thought of the burden on his shoulders and felt a bit apprehensive for a time. Xie Junping never expected that this big and tall brother would actually want to run away at the last minute. He was exasperated at Shuelei's failure to meet his expectations. "What the hell are you nervous about? This is a social party. It's actually very simple on the student level. It's nothing more than finding an excuse to relax. The venue, the drinks, the beauties, the handsome men, and the unspeakable things. Are you afraid that Tang Yi will take a fancy to you? So what if she takes a fancy to you? Don't tell me you're training in the Virgin Arts? You're the one who's training in the Virgin Arts." Shuelei's voice rose by a notch, but then he felt weak. "You guys are all playing this crazy? Everyone has their own choices. Only by participating in these kinds of activities can you find your position. You know who you can cooperate with in the future. You know who you can use. You know who you can sell. You know who you need to hide far away." Xie Junping was deep in thought. He looked at Shuelei's expression and spat out a mouthful of spittle. "You really believe that? A bunch of students. Students? Who doesn't play a little bit first? If you don't like it, then you fight. If you do like it, then you fight. If you do like it, then you make friends. Everything is easy to talk about. Besides, we're just preparing for a rainy day. We don't need to look at Tang Yi's mood. We're just giving her face. Let's go." Xie Junping dragged Shuelei along as the group walked in circles around the viewing platform. After a few turns, they arrived at a semi-open bar in the corner. There was a circle of sofas here. There were no lights. Only a faint blue glow spilled out from the world's #1 cylindrical water tank. 7 people sat on the sofa. 4 men and 3 women. I found the main character. Xie Junping spoke in a low voice. Then he strode forward to the outside of the circular sofa. He slapped the back of the sofa, scaring the person closest to him. When he turned his head to look, he laughed and cursed. This was how they got into a conversation. Luo Nan naturally used his mental senses to distinguish them due to the dusky lighting and the fact that he was cultivating in the eye's orifice. Soon he felt that aside from Yao Feng, who was talking to Xie Junping, the three men in the group of 6 were quite eye-catching. 2 of them were relatively young. They were around 20 years old. There was another person who was a bit older. He was around 30 years old. This age was already beyond the norm for this party. Xie Junping began to introduce them. Oh, they're all best buddies who came together to play. Shuelei, a young martial artist. He's first-rate. You know Frost River Reality, right? That place on Fudong Main Street. Leister was one of the last people to withdraw. Luo Nan, one of the last people to withdraw. He's an extremely outstanding psychologist. He's also my savior. Luo Nan listened with complex emotions. It was rare for Xie Junping to think of these words to brag to the 2 of them. But what the hell was a psychologist? On the other side, Yao Feng was muttering to himself. Why did Xie Junping, who always brought a sexy female companion, suddenly change? But his attitude was still very cordial. He took the initiative to stick his wristbands together and exchange contact information. In the end, Yao Feng turned his head to introduce Luo Nan to the people on this side. It was at this time that someone spoke. Frost River Reality? That's interesting. My sister is stingy. No one can give me a proper explanation for that mess. Why don't you guys give me a proper explanation? The person who spoke was one of the 3 men Luo Nan had paid attention to. He sat in the innermost position and wore a military uniform. It was true that being a soldier was a profession, but it was unavoidable that an ordinary person would be suspected of breaking the law if they wore it. This person didn't sit properly. His arms were resting on the back of the sofa, taking up quite a bit of space. He had a sloppy appearance. Xie Junping was displeased to see such a tone. He had always been the one to display it for others to see. When had he ever enjoyed it himself? Xie Junping could feel the arrogance in the other's words. His heart became angry, but Hu Huaying lightly tapped him in the ribs. There was also Yao Feng. He used the dusky lighting to fiercely signal Xie Junping with his eyes. Xie Junping didn't drink alcohol or take drugs. His mind was still clear. His heart skipped a beat. He swallowed the words that were at the tip of his tongue. Yao Feng seized the moment of silence and rushed to introduce him. Come. Let's get to know each other first. I'll introduce you guys. Yidonglu. The soldier, inside, raised his hand. It was as if he was signing up. His voice was cheerful. He's just an outsider. He came to join in the fun. Xie Junping's mind spun in a circle. He really didn't know where this immortal came from. However, this person didn't look deep. Xie Junping could roughly guess his temperament. He was a silk pants. A big silk pants. Like repels like. Xie Junping just couldn't find this fellow pleasing to the eye. At this time, Hu Huaying moved closer and whispered into his ear. Empty sky he. It was only 3 words, but the meaning behind them was truly terrifying. Xie Junping screamed in his mind, fuck me. He immediately admitted defeat. He was worried that Luo Nan and Shuelei wouldn't be able to handle the situation well. He rushed to put on a sea-style attitude and laughed. What outsider? There are no outsiders here. We'll get to know each other from here. My surname is Xie Junping. I'm just a bored idler. His finger streaked across Luo Nan and Shuelei before landing on Hu Huaying. I've introduced these 2. There's also my other best friend. Hu Huaying, who old third. He's a large farm owner. I feel that his family's farm will be opened into the wilderness sooner or later. Xie Junping wanted to blur the focus and skip the problem of Frost River Reality. Yao Feng was very cooperative. He said with a beaming smile, Third's family raises cattle. My family raises fish. We're all friends of the older generation. Hu Huaying raised her paper hat in greeting. Donglu laughed very happily from the seat inside the ring-shaped sofa. It really is a coincidence. We can all match up. We also have a martial artist here. We also have an old driver. How would a doctor and a driver match up? This bro's train of thought was too jumpy. The group of people were a bit stupefied. Yao Feng was the first to recover. He hurriedly changed the topic. Let me introduce you. This is Feng Jiejun, Instructor Feng. He's the youngest high-level instructor of the Thunder Falcon Dojo. He should be in the same circle as Shuelei. It's a good opportunity to get closer. We'll interact in a bit. Maybe we'll even work together. Feng Jiejun was only in his early 20s. He was older than Shuelei by 5 or 6 years, but he was already very young. Compared to Shuelei, he was a bit thinner and a bit more handsome. He was the type that was very popular with girls. Shuelei? He should be a rising star in the circle. Let's get to know each other. Chapter 292. Feng Jiejun's eyelids drooped slightly, but the smile on his face became much clearer. Coach Shui. Shuelei said modestly, not at all. I'm at most an assistant instructor in the dojo. I haven't finished my apprenticeship yet. Is that so? Which dojo is it? Shuelei wouldn't let go of any opportunity to make the dojo famous. He immediately enunciated clearly, River Wu District, Divine Yu Dojo. The dojo master's family is surnamed Xiao? Feng Jiejun grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. I've heard a lot about you. Shuelei was startled and then delighted. Coach Feng, you know our dojo master? Of course I know him. He's a divine fish after all. He's famous. The word fish was especially long. No matter how straightforward Shuelei was, he still felt something was wrong. He looked again at Feng Jiejun, who was smiling and extending his hand. We should also get to know each other. In the martial arts circle, shaking hands wasn't a good thing. Want to shake hands? Shuelei hesitated slightly, but seeing the other party's resolute attitude, he curled his lips and also extended his hand. The two shook hands. He then heard Feng Jiejun continue, I've heard of Dojo Master Xiao's great name for a long time. After all, it's rare to see someone who can open a fish dojo in Basan building for 10 years. It's said that he'll be moving soon. Feng Jiejun wanted to display his relaxed attitude and speak fluently, but at the last moment he suddenly choked. Shuelei raised his thick eyebrows. A teeth-numbing screeching sound came from where the two shook hands. Then there was a light explosion like a slightly deflated balloon being burst. At this moment, Feng Jiejun's palm was like a spirit snake. He withdrew from Shuelei's 5 fingers, but his body unconsciously leaned back, stiffening for a moment before straightening again. He lowered his head to look at his own palm. His expression darkened, and the corner of his mouth twitched before recovering his smile. Your strength is polished quite well. Enemies meet on a narrow road? Donglu sat up a bit and withdrew his arm from the back of the sofa. His palms banged against his abdomen and he even rubbed them a couple of times. He had the attitude of watching a good show. What you said wasn't wrong, but was it really good to say it directly? Even Xie Junping had to concede defeat to Donglu's silk pants ability. He thought to himself, if I don't drink and take pills, I'm afraid I won't be able to beat him. Yao Feng felt that he had suffered an unexpected disaster, but he couldn't vent his anger. He could only rack his brains to persuade him. It's common sense to spar in martial arts, but if you come too early the later programs will be boring. Young Master He? You're right. Donglu readily accepted advice. He appeared to be quite easy to talk to, but once he opened his mouth, it was somewhat like his words were made of gold and jade. Feng Jiejun frowned slightly and finally took a step back. However, Shuelei wouldn't let him off so easily. He glared angrily at Feng Jiejun. Seeing this, Feng Jiejun's eyes darkened. Upon seeing the situation, Donglu laughed. Don't be anxious. Didn't you hear that there will be another program later? When the time comes I'll give you a share. I've been waiting for so long. Old Yao, where's your family's greatest treasure? Yao Feng looked down at his wristband and forced a smile. We're almost there. He gave Xie Junping a meaningful glance as he spoke. Xie Junping understood tacitly and suppressed the unhappiness in his heart. He chuckled. Young Master He, go ahead and play. We'll walk around a bit more. Donglu pointed at him with his hand. Don't forget about the program. Program my ass. Xie Junping cursed in his mind. If he were to talk with Yao Feng for a while longer in this situation, Yao Feng would probably cry. He definitely wouldn't be in the mood to help them hook up with Tang Yi. From this, it could be seen that their primary goal in participating in this party was most likely to fail. He and Hu Huaying dragged Luo Nan and Shuelei away. Shuelei hadn't said a single word ever since he grabbed Xie Junping's hand. His expression was solemn, and his anger had yet to dissipate. He was pulled a few steps away by Hu Huaying, and then he turned his head to look back. Feng Jiejun didn't respond. It looked like he was on the phone. Luonan watched the entire exchange from beginning to end. He completely became a spectator. Whether it was smart or clumsy, the way these second generations dealt with each other was not his domain of expertise. He had no interest whatsoever. Only Feng Jejun's matter was baffling. It even involved Xiao Xinyu and his Daoguan. Luonan had no choice but to worry. His thoughts stirred slightly, and Feng Jejun's words from a dozen meters away, including the general response from the other side, were all captured by his mental senses and transmitted back to him. Shuelei's expression was still quite ugly. He found it hard to calm his anger. This Feng fellow is really baffling. Did our Daoguan provoke him? Is Basan manner a hindrance to him? Luonan responded casually as he monitored the situation over there. It's hard to say. Huh? You're saying? Shuelei wasn't stupid. Once he confirmed the key elements, he followed the vines to the melon. He soon pulled out a chain of clues. The meaning behind this Feng fellow's words is that he's jealous that our Daoguan is at Basan building? The Thunder Falcon Dojo is a big business. It wouldn't go so far as to. Could it be that he lost a bet back then and wants to get back at us? That's about it. Luonan remembered Shuelei mentioning something. Back when Xiao Xinyu settled down in Xia City, he made a bet with someone and won the right to use the Daoguan's grounds for 10 years. Feng Jejun had mentioned words like 10 years and moving away when he was talking to Shuelei. Luonan compared this to the information revealed in the conversation, and the situation became clearer. Shuelei spat. The Daoguan is about to move away before coming. What were you doing 10 years ago? This won't do. Nanster, I'm going to make a call. Contact the gym master? Yes. The gym master never mentions these things, but he's about to provoke us. We can't muddle through it. Luonan stared at him. Be patient when you ask. Tell me later. Shuelei nodded. He found a secluded place and contacted the Daoguan. Since Xiao Xinyu usually didn't carry electronic devices, the call was a bit more troublesome. Luonan looked at Shuelei's actions and subconsciously shook his head. I might not be able to get the answer. I need to go through other channels. From Luonan's understanding of Gym Master Xiao was truly a man of few words. As long as Gym Master Xiao didn't want to talk, no matter how Shuelei pestered him, Gym Master Xiao wouldn't get any answers. Luonan wanted to find more channels to gather information in order to prevent the Gym Master from being stubborn. His best choice in Xia City was undoubtedly the Explorers Society. The society was able to absorb a powerful martial artist like Mr. Giant Arm. Presumably, the society should have a good understanding of the matters of the circle. Luonan pressed his earlobe out of habit. He had just logged onto the psychic wave network, but he was unable to find anyone. A small portion of the deep blue light in the environment was suddenly blocked by shadows. The remaining light shook violently. Some sort of oppressive factor caused the nearby people to instinctively turn their heads. Their gazes turned in the direction of the central crystal pillar. An enormous and flat ferocious monster with a diameter of over 15 meters could be seen near the inner wall of the crystal pillar. It was like an aircraft gliding at high speed. In the blink of an eye, it crossed dozens of meters of water. It rushed to the edge of the crystal pillar and fiercely collided with it. Its momentum was astonishing. The collision momentum of such an enormous monster was enough to shake one's soul, even though they were separated by the crystal wall. Some of the partygoers had been sticking close to the crystal pillar to enjoy the beautiful scenery of the seabed. Who would have thought that the scene would suddenly change? They instinctively cried out in fear and retreated in panic. There were even some unlucky souls who tripped and fell on their butts, making a fool of themselves. The monster, which looked more like a bat than a fish, suddenly rose up when it saw that it was about to collide head-on. Its deathly pale belly practically stuck to the inner wall of the crystal pillar as it climbed up at high speed. It displayed its astonishing wingspan in the most direct way possible, as well as the rows of malevolent mouthparts on both sides of its belly. Oh, and of course, one couldn't forget its slender tail that was 10 meters long. The tail was densely covered in blue and black scales. It was like an ironclad whip, and fine sparks of electricity even leaped and flowed on it. Its enormous body, powerful mobility, strange body composition. All sorts of elements formed the image of a terrifying monster fish, but this fellow didn't give up. After sticking close to the inner wall of the crystal pillar and climbing a certain distance, it fiercely flipped backwards. At the same time, it rapidly spun around the central axis of its body. Everywhere it passed, the seawater would swirl. The rapidly spinning waves were actually as sharp as swords. Everywhere it passed, fish and prawns, big and small, would be minced into pieces and then sucked into the mouthparts on its belly. The seawater that was originally clear and limpid instantly became muddy and bloody. The terrifying monster fish broke through the limits of a normal person's line of sight in the muddy whirlpool and disappeared without a trace. Even though the participants were elites from first-rate schools, the majority of them couldn't help but be stupefied on the spot after suddenly witnessing such a bloody scene. They were speechless for a long time. However, there were also a small number of people who were either prepared or had a different temperament. They were still able to face it calmly. There were even more people who laughed loudly in excitement. Yidonglu was the one who laughed the loudest. Even separated by over 10 meters, his laughter could be heard. This bastard is a mutant without a doubt. At the very least it's a second class. It's rare that its wild nature hasn't been eliminated, yet you guys were still able to capture it. Such a malevolent and terrifying monster fish had already far exceeded the limits of what a normal biological system could contain. It was indeed a mutant species. Professionals who were familiar with the mutant genealogy could see that this monster fish should have mutated from a manta ray, the devil ray that people often referred to as a foundation. A normal manta ray was an ancient and gentle species. It had already lived on Earth for hundreds of millions of years. Its offensive capabilities weren't strong. It was only because of its robust body and its monstrous appearance that it received the name devil ray. However, under the effects of mutant, the monster fish within the crystal pillar had already become a devil in name and in reality. Especially the scene of indiscriminate slaughter before it left caused people to tremble with fear. Xie Junping had just suffered quite a bit of fright, so much so that he bit his own cheek. His mood was even worse. He couldn't help but curse. Yao Si doesn't want to do business anymore. Releasing this thing. Halfway through his words, he saw that Luo Nan and the others were looking behind him. He immediately turned around and saw Yao Feng with an ugly expression. Xie Junping didn't feel embarrassed at all. He just laughed and said, "What's wrong? The young master of the He family isn't going to serve you anymore?" Yao Feng instinctively shot a glance behind him when he heard this, but he felt that his actions were too embarrassing. He waved his hand and laughed bitterly. "I won't be serving you for now. I'll hide for now. Rely on the mountain to survive. Rely on the sea to survive. You guys are a black-hearted drug dealer and a large farm owner. We don't need to pay attention to you guys, but we make a living on the sea. How can we bypass the coastal defense forces? Bypass this family? We have to curry favor with them." Chapter 293. Oh, which one? Luo Nan's mind turned, but he saw a number he had never seen before. He was inevitably surprised. Just as he was about to answer the call, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He switched to the settings interface and sure enough he had already set the restricted communication mode. In this mode, other than the people he had added to his contact list, no one else could communicate with him. They could only leave messages. The reason for this was He Yuan's suggestion. It was said that it could minimize distractions and focus on cultivation. So the question was, how did this number get in? Luo Nan was also curious as to who was talking to him. He was just about to connect when the other party's communication request was cut off. He waited for a while but there was no follow-up. When he called back, the system showed, "Contact is limited, please leave a message." Alright, what's with this kind of low-level malfunction? It had been more than 10 days and the debugging of the psychic wave network still hadn't ended? Luo Nan shook his head and cast this matter aside for now. He shifted the focus of his attention back to Divine Yu Jim. Obviously, Luo Nan needed to find people in the circle to understand the grudges and grievances of the martial artist circle in Xia City. But Luo Nan filtered through the people he knew in the society, and he only remembered Giant Arm. It was still a situation where he knew the other party, but the other party might not know him. Then he could only find someone close to him. Crag Burst seemed to be the most suitable. That person came from the military, but he was one of the top 10 powerhouses in Xia City in terms of physical strength. He also had a lively temperament. He should have a common language with the martial artist circle. Luo Nan organized his words in his mind and sent a communication request to Crag Burst. Unexpectedly, the system was still as cold as ever. The other party's communication is restricted. Please leave a message. Luo Nan could conclude that there was indeed a problem with the psychic wave network. He couldn't help but scratch his head. He was used to the convenience of the psychic wave network, and the members of the association would rarely record their wristband communication numbers, and he was no exception. Now he had lost contact with all of them. He could only wait. At this time the second generations were still hurting each other. Yao Feng poured out a pile of grievances, but Xie Junping was completely uninterested. He only asked what he was concerned about. Hey, that's a mutant. You placed it here. Don't tell me you messed around with Ocean Sky Cloud City and then bought it from other shareholders at a low price. Hey, you can't talk nonsense about this kind of thing. Yao Feng's face turned green. He wished he could cover Xie Junping's mouth. Unfortunately, he couldn't cover it up. He could only grit his teeth and explain, it's a client. He's also a distant relative of my mother's. He loves collecting mutants and was willing to spend a lot of money to order one. It wasn't easy to get it for him, but who knew that he would die from overexcitement while watching the underground boxing match? It's not suitable to put it back in the sea, so I can only leave it here. I've been having a headache these past few days because of this thing. Who are you trying to fool? Xie Junping wasn't fooled. In your Yao family, it's not easy to find cooking utensils, and there are ponds all over the place for fish. Is there a need to place them here to spoil the simulated ecosphere that you've painstakingly built? This is all business. Hey Yao Si, are you sure you don't have any way to make money that you want to share? Xie Junping giggled mischievously as he held onto Yao Feng's shoulder. He stole a wink at Luo Nan. Since Yao Feng took the initiative to deliver himself to Luo Nan, there was absolutely no reason to let him go. This time, Xie Junping was going to keep a close eye on this predetermined middleman. He was going to establish a connection with Tang Yi through him, and Hu Huaying was on the sidelines. The two cooperated with great rapport. Luo Nan could only watch from the sidelines. He stayed for a long time and listened to all the twists and turns. He felt that it was quite boring and Shuelei was still on the phone with the Daoguan. His feet were pacing endlessly. It seemed that things weren't going too smoothly. Luo Nan stood silently for a moment, then his gaze turned to the simulated marine ecosystem behind him, which had just experienced an attack. After the monster fish wreaked havoc on this side, it fled into the depths of the crystal pillar. It had long since disappeared without a trace. However, even though a considerable amount of time had passed, the monster fish's power still lingered. Many schools of fish that were swimming leisurely were intimidated by an incorporeal pressure when they approached this area. They scattered and fled one after another. Beautiful purples and reds blossomed within the deep blue light. There was a different kind of marvelous beauty to it. Luo Nan calmly watched these chaotic schools of fish. Light swirled in his eyes, but he didn't open his eyes orifice to cultivate. He just did a few rough experiences. His feet slowly moved with the school of fish during this process. He was already quite a distance away from Xie Junping and the others by the time he came to his senses. He didn't care. In any case, he was communicating with Yao Feng right now. It wasn't his turn to appear. And as long as he wanted to, the entire party area was within the range of his clairvoyance. He wouldn't get lost. He tried to communicate with the psychic wave network, but it still hadn't recovered. He didn't think too much about it. He strolled forward along the viewing platform, stopping every now and then. His eyes observed the school of fish, and his mental senses went in and out. 2 different domains, 2 different modes. They were different, but because the sources of information overlapped, they displayed a marvelous corresponding relationship. Luo Nan walked halfway. The information on the mental plane and the material plane corresponded with each other, naturally triggering mutual interference. The magnitude of the interference was extremely small. It was perhaps 1,000 times weaker than the amount of soul strength transferred from the formatting barrier. However, the influence on the eye's orifice still existed in reality. Luo Nan's eye's orifice, what was even more rare was that it was unending. It had the wonderful effect of silently moistening things. The recovery speed of the water level of the eye's orifice also slowly increased. Luo Nan savored the subtleties within in detail. He was absent-minded for a time. This is a good thing, right? He stopped moving. He had a feeling of unease. Luo Nan suddenly sensed something at this very moment. Though the thoughts and emotions in his mind were still a mess, his body moved according to his senses. He dodged slightly to the side, missing by a hair's breadth, perfectly dodging the petite figure behind him with her head lowered. However, the notebook that was stuck between his elbows was caught by something and fell to the ground. The page spread open, revealing the lines that had been scribbled on it. Only a rough outline could be seen. "Oh, I'm sorry." The girl who had nearly caused a rear-end accident apologized. She combed her long hair and bent over to pick up the notebook that had fallen to the ground. Her fingertips touched the page of the notebook when she suddenly realized something. She raised her head in astonishment. Junior Nan. Luo Nan grunted and responded, Senior Sister Tian. What a coincidence. The person who brushed shoulders with Luo Nan was none other than Tian Si. She smiled as she picked up the notebook and handed it back to Luo Nan. It's not exactly a coincidence. You'll always see it if you participate in this party. Are you pretending to be a doctor? Tian Si tilted her head slightly and sized up Luo Nan's attire. This caused the tablet she was carrying on her shoulder to sway slightly. Luo Nan gave her a glance and laughed. Senior Sister is pretending to be a painter. He had studied for a period of time in a professional art foundational class when he was learning to sketch. He was no stranger to the attire of a professional. Tian Si was also very clever. She was still wearing the same attire she wore on campus. She just had an additional drawing clip, but she displayed a refined and gentle temperament. It was sublimated when contrasted with the tool. No one would be able to say that she was a female artist who had gone out to collect art. However, the drawing clip was most likely the thing that had just hung on the notebook. Tian Si replied with a smile, I've always been in the Design Institute. Although I'm currently focused on industrial design, I did pursue some art in my early years. How is it? Not bad? It's a good match. Luo Nan's words came from the bottom of his heart, but he had no intention of starting a conversation. He was currently in a restless state of mind. He said a few words out of courtesy and wanted to leave. Tian Si pursed her lips into a smile. She had the posture of having a long conversation. Junior brother Luo's attire is a bit strange. Luo Nan couldn't just ignore her words. He asked honestly, what's strange about it? I just feel that junior brother Luo shouldn't be a doctor. It's purely a feeling. Tian Si's fingers playfully drew 2 circles around her temples. Then she pointed at the notebook that had just been delivered to Luo Nan's crook. There's also this tool. It's a bit out of place. Luo Nan simply answered, I carry it with me. I'm used to it. Luo Nan felt that it was truly strange for Tian Si to blurt out such meaningless words. The relationship between the two was superficial. Even if Tian Si wanted to find someone to chat with, she shouldn't have chosen him. Luo Nan's mind sensed something as soon as his thoughts reached this point. He focused his mind a bit and saw a young man in his early 20s behind Luo Nan. The young man's attire was basically similar to Luo Nan's. He was a doctor character with a tall and straight figure and a handsome appearance. However, the gaze that was cast in Luo Nan's direction was a bit unfriendly. Tian Si should be able to see this person from her angle, but she just acted as if she didn't know. She chatted with Luo Nan with a smile. Luo Nan looked at the expression and movements of the young doctor. He had more or less guessed what was going on. He shook his head in his mind. Tian Si leaned over. Was she expecting him to attract the firepower? None of the people who could participate in the 5 schools fellowship party were easy to deal with. He was young and not tall, so it would be a waste to use him as a shield. Just as he was pondering how to expose her, he heard Tian Si praise lightly, I took a second look just now. Junior brother Luo's foundation in drawing lines is very solid. 3 years later, if I can enter the School of Design and inherit my family's teachings, it will definitely be a story to be told. Homeschool. Luo Nan's mind trembled. His original thoughts scattered in an instant, leaving behind only chaotic emotions. He didn't know how to respond for a time. Tian Si put her hands together and made an apologetic gesture. I'm sorry, junior brother Luo. I found it very strange last time at Frost River Reality. You were the only one with a different surname among the group of Mo family youngsters, so I asked Mo Chio a question. Then I heard Tian Chi mention a few things about you that were circulating in their society. I was curious for a moment, so I looked up some information. Only then did I find out that you are the child of Senior Zhongheng and Senior Sister Qingwen. Yes, Luo Nan's parents had indeed studied at the School of Design. Tian Si's words about homeschool were completely correct. Tian Si took a step forward, her attitude becoming more intimate. Actually, I've been looking for an opportunity to thank you for the past few days. Luo Nan's mind was a bit numb. What? Some time ago, I wanted to choose a topic for my graduation project. I also wanted to apply to be Professor Pan Wen's graduate student, but I rejected several topics in a row. Tian Si cast her gaze on Luo Nan's face. She spoke softly, I really had no choice. Junior brother's matter just so happened to give me inspiration. I used senior sister Qingwen's coupling design theory from back in the day to do a new research topic. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.